Members, we are going to continue our third reading file. Before we broke for our caucus meetings, we ended with file item 194. So if Mr. Krikorian is prepared to take up file item 195, file item 195 is passed temporarily. Ms. Salas is prepared to take up file item 196. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1568 by the Committee on Veteran Affairs, an act relating to veterans.
You may open, Ms. Salas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Support on both sides.
Support on both sides, great. AB 1568 will implement the Public Assistance Reporting Information System, a system that would enable the Department of Healthcare Services to identify veterans enrolled in Medi-Cal programs who could receive medical benefits through Federal Benefits Administration. The experience of two states that already implemented PARIS system, Ohio and Pennsylvania, which have a lower veterans population, the savings have already resulted in $11 million. The general fund savings to California could be $250 million a year. If fully implemented, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Support on both sides, members. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 0. The measure is adopted. Members will back up a few items to Mr. Hill. Mr. Hall, not Mr. Hill, Mr. Hall, file item 184. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 804 by Assemblymember Hall, an act relating to invasive aquatic species.
There is support on both sides. You may open, Mr. Hall.
Thank you. Madam Speaker and members, for over 35 years, Martin Luther King Hospital provided trauma care services, surgery, hospitalization, and birthing service to over 1.6 million people that lived and worked
Mr. Hall, just a moment. I think we put up the wrong bill. Just a moment, please. I need to confirm which bill you're presenting. All right, we will retake. We'll take that over. We're AB 804. That's the one you're presenting with support on both sides.
Check. Yeah, I want to talk about mussels. Support on both sides for mussels. Madam Speaker, AB 804 requires the Department of Fish and Game and Department of Water Resources to conduct a study to identify the level of success in eradicating the invasive guagu mussels from our water systems. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. The measure passes. Mr. Price, if you are prepared to take up file item 197, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1145 by Assemblymember Price, an act relating to architects and making an appropriation therefore.
You may open, Mr. Price.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. California law generally places a cap on the amount a licensing board may charge a licensee for a license. These statutory limits protect licensees from being overcharged and encourage licensing boards to operate efficiently and effectively. AB 1145 increases the statutory cap that the California Architects Board may impose as a maximum fee for renewing an architect's license. Under the provisions of this bill, the maximum fee will increase to $400 every 2 years. This fee has remained at $200 for more than 2 decades. An adjustment is now needed in order to ensure that the California Architect Board has the capacity to maintain its current level of service in future years. AB 1145 is jointly sponsored by the California Architects Board and the California Council of the American Institute of Architects. There is no opposition. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Yes.
Mr. Emerson?
Question the author.
Without objection.
This is your last bill?
Correct.
You were supposed to tell us, you know. Thank you.
You're being told.
Mr. Swanson?
Yes, Madam Speaker, question of the author.
Without objection.
Yeah, is this your last bill as a member of the Assembly?
The very last.
You're going to be a senator, is that correct?
That's the plan.
And do you think you're important because of that?
Well,
you think you're better than us because of that?
I always appreciate your support and encouragement, yes.
Are you going to remember us in the lower house?
How can I forget?
Well, in that case, I vote I have a bill.
Mr. Price, do you care to make your final close as an Assemblyman?
I humbly request your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 2. The measure passes. We move on to Mr. Huffman, file item 198. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1173 by Assemblymember Huffman and others, an act relating to recycling.
You may open, Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This body's shown great leadership in recent years by setting some of the most ambitious energy efficiency standards for lighting in the world, and those standards have now become a national standard. But there's a little bit of unfinished business. Even though we are driving the sale of millions of new compact fluorescent bulbs, and that is having the result of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing energy consumption and saving money for consumers, there is the little problem of recycling those products, because compact fluorescents include trace elements of mercury. It is a household hazardous waste. You can't just throw them away. And we need a creative approach to provide a free and convenient program for consumers to properly dispose of these products while at the same time helping reduce the amount of mercury in CFLs. End-of-life CFLs have virtually no value, and so the collection and recycling of them do require a creative approach, and that's what this bill does. This bill, quite simply, would limit payment of energy efficiency funds for CFL prebates, that is, money from the public goods charge that's now being given to utilities and others to drive down the costs of CFLs. It would limit those prebates to folks who can demonstrate one of the following things. Either direct implementation of a CFL recycling program, for example, through retailers, or the commitment of financial support for CFL recycling in a specified amount. The other thing this bill does that's very important is it requires that the CFLs that are supported through these prebate programs actually meet Energy Star version 4.0 standards, and that includes lower mercury. It also includes longer product life, because some of these first-generation cheap bulbs that we've been subsidizing through the public goods charge actually have not delivered as promised, and we need to improve the quality control in that effort. This is a bill that is supported by the industry, the lighting industry, and by the environmental community, and also by ratepayer advocates, including TURN. Respectfully request your aye vote.
Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. If you will, please go back with me to just last year when we passed the legislation out of this House that led to the legislation being proposed this afternoon. And if you go back to that period of time, you may recall that I warned that this would be the next step. And of course, there was all kinds of demonstrations, oh no, that it's not going to lead to recycling, and almost kind of a laughter, a dismissiveness about it. Ladies and gentlemen, The law of unintended consequences is once again in full flower. What we're looking at here is something that will cause about an $8 to $12 million increase in state bureaucracy, additional fees, and I predict it won't be enough. That what you'll find is that the fees being charged will not be sufficient to prevent consumers from improperly disposing of compact fluorescent light bulbs using mercury that would be then disposed in the normal municipal waste stream, causing potential problems with groundwater toxins leaking out of that landfill at some point in the future. So, of course, the next step is going to be some sort of a mandatory recycling program. And you'll probably hear, the author, again, be dismissive of my concerns, as was the case the last year. And sure enough, I predict within a year or two, maybe 3, you'll probably have a $5 fee per compact fluorescent light bulb with a mandatory recycling program, because the fact is that CFLs contain a deadly neurotoxin, mercury. Ladies and gentlemen, if we simply let the rapid pace of technology take its course, what we're now seeing, of course, is light-emitting diode light fixtures that are in many cases even more efficient and don't contain sufficient or significant amounts of mercury. We ought not to be legislating in this area. We should instead allow consumers to have choice, and instead of forcing the issue, as has been done in this case, where then we created a whole series of then unintended consequences by increasing the amount of mercury in our waste streams, let's instead just let the technological innovation take its course and let the consumers have their choice, instead of creating, as this bill does, a whole new bureaucracy that is now funded by fees, which inevitably will be proven inadequate to the task, leading very soon, I predict again, to mandatory recycling and some sort of a recycling fee, because this will not be sufficient to cause consumers to return their spent CFLs to some central place for recycling. I urge a no vote.
Seeing no further discussion, Mr. Huffman, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to clarify that the bill, which passed out of this House 2 years ago with bipartisan support, is not having an unintended consequence. In fact, we talked quite candidly about the mercury and the recycling issues at that time, and that's why the bill included a provision setting up a recycling task force to spend a year looking at this issue. That's what they did. And that included members from industry, from just about every stakeholder interest you can imagine. And this bill before you today implements the recommendation of that task force. So this is not an afterthought. This is not unintended consequence. This is a very natural staging of a comprehensive public policy approach to this challenge. There are no additional fees that are mandated here. Just to clarify, this bill only applies to entities that receive public goods charge subsidies from energy ratepayers to promote CFL sales. And it simply says that if you're going to receive those subsidies, you need to be part of a recycling program. That is not too much to ask for the millions of dollars that we are using to subsidize the price of CFLs. And finally, I just want to emphasize that this is a case where the lighting industry itself, the folks most affected by the bill before you today, wants you to pass it. They're working together with the environmental community, with ratepayer advocates to raise the bar in a way that will not only help us meet our energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction goals, but also get at this last piece of the puzzle, the recycling and the management of the toxic constituents in these products. I request your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Huffman. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 18. The measure passes. We move to Ms. Brownlee, file item 199. The clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1269 by Senator Brownlee, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
You may open, Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 1269 is a bill to encourage participation in the Medi-Cal Working Disabled Program by continuing coverage for enrollees who are temporarily unemployed and by reforming some of the eligibility requirements. This bill will help the disabled enjoy independence and productive lives and save money for the state in three very specific ways. One, by leading healthier lifestyles, which reduces Medi-Cal utilization costs, by paying more taxes as earned income increases by the disabled, and by contributing more to the cost of their own health insurance. Access to health care should not be a hindrance for this underutilized workforce with great potential. Let's give Californians with disabilities the opportunity to thrive and not just to survive. California will save more in the long run. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in opposition to this bill. I really appreciate what the author is attempting to do, and I applaud the efforts. My concern is at a time when we are drastically talking about cutting existing programs, including health care programs for children and others, that it's not the best time to consider expanding the state program. It is true it is a federal match, but as we know with so many federal matches, it does require a state dollar. And my concern is in these difficult budget deficit times, expanding an existing program at a time when we're talking about some pretty severe cuts to current ones would not be the most prudent or wise course. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, Ms. Brownlee, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this bill is a straightforward bill. It is about a very small investment on the front end with huge cost savings for the state of California on the back end, particularly in the next coming fiscal years, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 25. Measure passes. File item 200 is passed temporarily. File item 201, Mr. Huffman's prepared to take that up. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1343 by Assemblymember Huffman and others, an act relating to solid waste.
You may open, Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Paint. The cans of paint in your garage or in your attic, sometimes belonging to the person who owned the home before you bought it, all of that leftover paint in California, believe it or not, is the #1 source of household hazardous waste in the state of California. In 2006, over 2 million gallons of paint were collected, costing local governments an average of $8 per gallon, or over $16 million per year to properly dispose of this problem. We did get the lead out of paint, but the pigments and other things still in latex paint are a big, big problem, and it can't simply be washed down the drain. It has to be properly disposed of. And right now the backstop for that is our beleaguered local governments. In 2007 and 2008, only 5% of California households recycled a proper waste disposal program for their leftover paint, signifying a great need for a convenient recycling program that's cost-effective and alleviates this burden on our local governments. This bill reduces the financial burden at the local level and protects the environment by requiring paint manufacturers to establish a recycling system for leftover paint. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Mr. Huffman moves a call. File item 202 is passed and retained. Mr. John Perez is ready to take up file item 203. Clerk will read. For purpose of amendments. Mr. Perez, we need to pass temporarily on this. Thank you. File item 204, pass and retain. File item 205 is a resolution by Ms. Ma. Ms. Ma, are you prepared to take up the resolution? Clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution number 28 by Assemblymember Ma and others relative to Eating Disorder Awareness Week.
You may open, Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, ACR 28 declares February 22nd through 28th, 2009, and February 21st through 27th, 2010 as Eating Disorders Awareness Weeks. In California, more than 4.1 million people suffer from anorexia, bulimia, binging, or some other unclassified eating disorder. In fact, anorexia is the third most common disorder among teens, behind obesity and asthma. For females between 15 to 24 years old who suffer from anorexia, the mortality rate associated with the illness is 12 times higher than the death rate of all other causes of death. Yet we don't have good statistics because heart failure or dehydration is listed on the death certificates. We need to focus more attention on this serious issue, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, Ms. Ma. Do you care to open the roll for co-authors? We'll open the first roll for co-authors. Clerk, please open the roll. This is for co-authors, members, if you'd like to be a co-author on the resolution. First roll is for co-authors on the resolution. Clerk will close the roll. We have 63 co-authors. We can adopt this on a voice vote. All those in favor of adopting the resolution signify by the usual sound of aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Mr. Perez, your bill is ready to take up, so we can go back to file item 203. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1360 with amendments by Assemblymember John A. Perez.
And there is support on both sides. You may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The amendments to AB 1360 are technical in nature and also add Republican and Democratic co-authors. I request that the bill be sent out to print and back on file. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
All those in favor of adopting the amendments signify by the usual sound of aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. The bill is out to print, back to file. We can go back and take up some of the bills that, just a moment. All right, members, earlier today we were able to take up some of our bills that were on second reading for purposes of taking them up today. And amendments that were received before noon this morning are in order to take up today. So without objection, we are going to work through the file, and beginning, well, file item 1 is pass and retain, file item 2 is pass and retain. We'll go to Mr. Swanson, file item 3. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 17 with amendments by Assemblymember Swanson.
Mr. Swanson, you may open.
Madam Speaker, AB 17 is up for amendments. It adds the urgency clause. No one will be upset, but the criminals. I ask for your aye vote.
There's support on both sides for these amendments. We can take a voice vote. All those in favor, please signify by the usual sound of aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Bill is out to print, back to file. Ms. Salas is prepared to take up file item 4 for Mr. Block. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 24 by Assemblymember Block and others, an act relating to the California State University.
Ms. Salas, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This bill would direct the Chancellor of the California State University System to study the feasibility of a CSU satellite campus in Chula Vista, with the possibility of this campus eventually becoming an independent CSU. The study must be completed within 18 months after the CSU trustees have certified that sufficient funds are available to conduct this study. The study would be paid for with outside private funding. The feasibility study is timely because SDSU has been declared an impacted campus, which means that there are more fully eligible applicants than the school can support. In 2008, the university admitted only 31% of freshman applicants. In order to reduce admission levels, SDSU has had to augment admission standards, leading to fewer opportunities for residents and students of color in the San Diego area. With the future of California depending on a highly educated workforce that can compete with high-growth industries, this result is unacceptable. Our fiscal situation should not prevent us from planning for the future, anticipating our educational needs and anticipating our workforce demands in order to remain competitive. This feasibility study is a first step towards addressing these problems in the South Bay and regionally. A new university in this region would be a boon to the community, creating construction jobs and small businesses opportunities, alleviating traffic in the overcrowded SDSU. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. There is support on both sides. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 64, noes 1. The measure passes. We move to file item 5. Mr. Nava. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 34 by Assemblymember Nava and others, an act relating to mortgage lending.
You may open, Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 34 implements a secure and fair enforcement of Mortgage Licensing Act. The bill will establish uniform standards and enforcement for mortgage loan originators. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 2. The measure passes. We move to file item 6. Passed temporarily. File item 7. Mr. Smythe will present for Mr. Blakesley. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 44 by Assemblymember Blakesley and others, an act relating to energy.
Mr. Smythe, you may open.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 44 encourages the deployment of energy storage systems needed to integrate intermittent renewable energy resources and to reduce peak load demand. This bill has not received a no vote as it's gone through the process, and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 71, noes 0. The measure passes. We move to file item 8. Mr. Portantino, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 48 by Assemblyman Portantino and others, an act relating to private post-secondary education and making an appropriation therefore.
You may open, Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. AB 48 is the long-anticipated Private Post-Secondary Education Act of 2009. After several attempts that have been vetoed by the governor over the last several years, and after 20 years of fundamental problems, in 2007, the prior act and the former Bureau were allowed to sunset. Many of you remember that the efforts last session to reach agreement on a new law, unfortunately, the legislature and the governor were unable to find compromise, and today we have no regulations of these private institutions. Students have no protections, and good schools can't expand at a time when we desperately need to increase job training services. Without a doubt, the status quo is unacceptable. This bill represents a joint effort with Assemblymember Nilo to find a level of compromise between Democrats and Republicans, the governor and the legislature, and institutions and consumer advocates. Certainly there is something for everyone to like and dislike in this bill, but I believe that it provides the foundation necessary to ensure essential protections for students, appropriate Bureau oversight, and clear expectations for school. That said, Mr. Neal and I will continue to work on the issue that have been brought to our attention by consumer groups and institutions as this bill continues to move. This bill received bipartisan support in Assembly Higher Education and Assembly Business and Professions, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, no 0. The measure passes. File item 9 is pass and retain. File item 10, Mr. Nava. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 50 by Assemblymember Nava, an act relating to disaster relief, making an appropriation therefore and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Support on both sides. You may open, Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill will provide disaster relief for the counties of Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Diego, San Bernardino, Santa Barbara, and Ventura County. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 69, no 0. The measure passes. File item 11 is passed temporarily. File item 12 is passed temporarily. File item 13 passed temporarily. File item 14, Mr. Fuhr. There's support on both sides. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 91 by Assemblymember Fuhr and others, an act relating to vehicles.
You may open.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. There is support on both sides, and in 3 policy committees there have been no votes on this measure. The purpose of this bill is to create a pilot project to test the efficacy of ignition interlock devices for drunk drivers. Let me just say in a sentence, there are more than 45,000 drunk drivers arrested annually who have been convicted of previous drunk driving offenses. This legislation is designed to reduce recidivism by getting those drivers in the habit of driving in a sober way. It's been highly effective elsewhere. Urge an aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. The measure is adopted. File item 15 is passed temporarily. File item 16 is passed temporarily. File item 17 is passed temporarily. 18 is passed temporarily. 19 is passed temporarily. We go to file item 20. Mr. Mendoza, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 211 by Assemblymember Mendoza and others, an act relating to school facilities.
Just a moment. I'm sorry, Mr. Mendoza. I don't have the go-ahead on this file just yet. We need to move to file item 21. So file item 20 is passed temporarily. We move to Mr. Bell, file item 21. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 217 by Assemblymember Bell, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Mr. Bell, you may open.
Madam Speaker, members, this bill allows counties to put up the state match in order to draw down available federal funds for screening and brief intervention of pregnant women. It will prevent fetal alcohol syndrome, the #1 cause of babies born with developmental disabilities. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 68, no 0. The measure passes. Mr. Navas prepared to take up file item 22. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 242 by Assemblyman Nava and others, an act relating to crimes.
Support on both sides. You may open, Mr. Navas.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill increases the penalties associated with spectatorship at a dogfight, has bipartisan support, no votes, support on both sides. Ask for your continued support.
Seeing no debate or discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0. The measure passes. We move to file item 23. Ms. Ma, the clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 245 by Assemblyman Ma, an act relating to physicians and surgeons.
You may open, Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, AB 245 would require the Medical Board of California to remove from its public website any expunged misdemeanors or felony convictions within 90 days of receiving the expungement. State law requires the Medical Board to post certain information on the Internet regarding physicians and surgeons. This disclosure of information by the Medical Board to the general public regarding physician conduct is an important public safeguard. However, the Medical Board often publishes information that is inaccurate, such as criminal misdemeanors or felony convictions that have been legally expunged. This is economically disastrous for the physician and can disrupt the successful delivery of health care services. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no discussion or debate, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 67, no 0. The measure passes. Members, file item 20 is eligible to take up, so we will go back to Mr. Mendoza's bill. File item 20. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 211 by Assemblyman Mendoza and others, an act relating to school facilities.
You may open, Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We do have support on both sides for AB 211. AB 211 would require all new construction projects to include door locks that can be locked from the inside of every classroom. Violent or potentially violent incidents on school campuses and in many neighborhoods surrounding school campuses continue and are increasing in alarming rates. These locks will help in lockdown situations in every school. It is supported by teachers. We respectfully ask for your aye vote. Support on both sides.
Seeing no debate or discussion, the clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 62, no 0. The measure passes.
Members, we're going to take up file item 24, AB 295. Mr. Amiano, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 295 by Assemblyman Ramiano, an act relating to public social services.
Mr. Amiano.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. This is a simple, cost-effective measure that reaffirms the state's commitment to fostering permanency and maintaining lifelong connections for at-risk and troubled youth. The legislation would allow counties participating in a pilot program aimed at increasing adoptions of older foster youth to spend the project funding over a longer period of time than originally provided, and eliminates the pilot status of the existing wraparound services program, making permanent and statewide a program now operating in a majority of counties. Neither of these programs will cost the state any new funding. The bill is sponsored by the City and County of San Francisco and supported by the County Welfare Directors Association. I thank you for consideration, and I urge your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 63, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 25, AB 302. Mr. Bell, clerk will read. 20. Do you have a copy of this? Well, on here is 25. File item 26, AB 303. Mr. Bell, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 303 by Assembly Bell and Act relating to Medi-Cal.
What am I? Mr. Bell, go right ahead.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 303 would allow local governments to use their own money instead of state funds to access federal funding for seismic retrofitting of public hospitals. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no discussion or debate, clerk will read. Clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 28, AB 320. Mr. Solario, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 320 by Assembly Solario and others, and Act relating to county jails.
Members, this is a support. Mr. Solario.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 320 is a follow-up to AB 900. This would grant additional flexibilities for counties to receive monies for jail expansion at the local level. Strong bipartisan support and law enforcement support. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 65, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 31, AB 343. Ms. Saldana, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 343 by Assemblymember Saldana and others, and Act relating to pupils.
Ms. Saldana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 343 will provide for more efficient treatment of our students and military families when they transfer from out of state into California or from out of California into another state. It's received unanimous support. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 64, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 32, AB 346. Mr. Torlakson, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 346 by
clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 346 by Assembly Torlakson and others, and Act relating to joint use school facilities.
Mr. Torlakson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this has to do with a more flexible way to do the joint use program that's been authorized under previous school bond measures to allow local partners the flexibility to declare land and other equipment donated costs. This is a smart kind of collaboration between local government partners to provide career tech facilities and other needed joint use where the city folks and the school folks can both use these important facilities. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 4. Measure passes. Move to file item 33, AB 350. Mr. Liu, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 350 by Assembly Liu and Act relating to debt.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 350 creates a comprehensive regulatory and enforcement program for debt settlement companies where none exists today. Debt settlement is a financial service where consumers are assisted with developing a personalized payment strategy, and then the service negotiates with consumers' creditors for the purposes of obtaining reductions of the amount owed to creditors. Unlike consumer credit counseling, debt settlement companies do not control the customer's money or receive any funding from the creditors. As the economy continues to slip deeper into recession, this service becomes an even more critical piece of the overall economic solution. Debt settlement is a mechanism by which consumers can avoid bankruptcy, reduce their debt, and return to a firm financial footing. The bill before you today, AB 350, is a product of over 2 years of work and encompasses extensive input from many stakeholders. Briefly, the bill requires all debt settlement companies to register with the state of California, pay a licensing fee, and provide significant oversight and enforcement authority to department corporations. To ensure consumers are protected, it includes strong false and deceptive advertising provisions, mandates extensive disclosures by the debt settlement companies, contains a priority action for consumers, and establishes an internal complaint process to ensure customer concerns are addressed quickly and effectively. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 12. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 34, AB 374, Mr. Block, presented by Mr. Fletcher. Mr. Pettis will present on behalf of Mr. Block. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 374 by Assemblymember Block, an act relating to high school pupils.
Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 374 is a simple bill that will provide students and their parents or guardians important information about the negative consequences of dropping out of school. Currently, 1 in every 4 students does not graduate from high school. This rate is dramatically lower among students of color or economically disadvantaged students. Students that drop out of school will generally earn less money, are more likely to spend time in jail, and be on public assistance. AB 374 created a consequences of dropping out form that will be posted on the California Department of Education website. Teachers and counselors can then use this form in several ways, such as a teaching aid in the classroom. The City of Chicago and the State of Indiana have both produced similar forms and have seen general trends toward higher graduation rates that began before and have continued since the introduction of these programs. All of us in the legislature understand the importance of keeping students in school, and in these difficult economic times, we need to develop unique ways of making the negative consequences of dropping out something that both students and parents understand and discuss. We ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, noes 4. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 36, AB 411. Mr. Garrick. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 411 by Assemblymember Garrick and others, an act relating to health facilities.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 411, authored by myself and Mrs. Harkey, seeks to remedy an issue with a hospital in our local area. Tri-City Medical Center, located in Oceanside, servicing the cities of Oceanside, Vista, Carlsbad, and our beautiful Camp Pendleton, is undergoing some hazardous testing. These studies should be done in the next couple months. However, a threat to closure of the hospital is still a possibility. As a matter of precaution, 411 was introduced to provide a vehicle should legislation be needed to remedy this situation. Throughout the committee process, we have worked to educate members about our intention with this legislation and have pledged to find consensus should the bill be substantially amended in the near future. I ask for an aye vote.
Ms. Harkey.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. I stand in concurrence with my other member, Mr. Garrick, who brought this to our attention after I had been elected to the Assembly. Tri-Cities has been tried many times to alleviate the situation. They need a little break. Let me see, it was SB 306 was approved by Senator Ducheney, and it was for county hospitals. This is, in essence, the county hospital of this area. They serve our broad community. They provide tertiary care, neonatal, strokes, heart attack, and an extreme amount of emergency services to the surrounding community, many of which would have no service or be underserved. There's also a lot of traffic in this area, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or more to get to another facility, probably in traffic more than a half hour to an hour. So we really need to keep this facility alive for the people in our community. I ask for your aye vote and your support as we work this through committees. Thank you.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 37, AB 413. Mr. Fuentes, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 413 by Assemblymember Fuentes, an act relating to energy.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 413 is also called the AB1X fix.
AB 1X was passed during the energy crisis in 2001 when wholesale electricity prices were skyrocketing, utilities were going bankrupt and couldn't keep the lights on, and energy traders were having a field day at California's expense. AB 1X capped the rates for the first two tiers of energy usage, which was intended to protect residential ratepayers from uncontrollable rate hikes. AB 1X also allowed the state to purchase energy for the cash-strapped utilities. It also suspended the ability for customers to choose their electricity providers, known as direct access. Fast forward 8 years to 2009, markets are stable, the utilities can engage in long-term contracts, and the failed electricity spot market went bankrupt. But the laws that were passed out of desperation to stop the dysfunctional market are now stifling progress. The costs of any new programs, whether they are energy efficiency or an increase in our renewable portfolio standard, are disproportionately borne by the high energy users, or those who use more than 130% of baseline. These high energy users come from all income levels. This bill is intended to protect all ratepayers from skyrocketing rate hikes to make sure any increases are calculated and measured. There are a number of other tweaks to ensure a balanced and equitable approach to achieve long-term rate stabilization. This bill reflects a tremendous amount of work from many parties and an awful lot of work, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing here, pardon me, Mr. Duvall.
Real quick.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Fuentes, I'm supporting your bill today.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 55, noes 3. Measure passes. Move to file item 39, AB 451, pass temporarily. Move to file item 41, AB 480. Mr. Tran, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 480 by Assemblymember Tran, an act relating to state bonds.
Mr. Tran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 480 is a straightforward measure that would require that all state bond measures passed by the voters must include auditing provisions. These audits will detail where the bond proceeds are spent. The audits would be performed periodically by the Bureau of State Audits, and the costs associated with these audits will come out of the bond proceeds. AB 480 will provide greater accountability on how taxpayer money will be spent and will provide the crucial oversight needed to give the citizens in California the assurance that their hard-earned taxpayer money is being properly spent. I respectfully urge your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 40. Move to file item 43, AB 487. Mrs. Brownlee, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 487 by Assemblymember Brownlee and others, an act relating to instructional materials.
Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Currently, districts dispose of used instructional materials in a variety of different ways. This bill would authorize districts and county offices of education to sell surplus and undistributed obsolete instructional materials. The bill would require at this moment that 50% of the proceeds of any sale or surplus of undistributed obsolete instructional materials be remitted to the state and 50% back to the district or county office of education. I have support on both sides of this bill. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure passes. Ms. Brownlee, are you prepared to take up file item 2, AB 8? We'll go there. File item 2, AB 8. Ms. Brownlee, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill A by Assemblymember Brownlee and others, an act relating to education finance.
Ms. Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 8 is an imperative next step in overhauling California's educational finance system and is crafted to build on the careful analysis conducted under Getting Down to Facts and the Governor's Committee on Educational Excellence. The measure establishes a working group of experts to make final recommendations to the legislature. AB 8 will achieve consensus and reform our complex and confusing educational finance system while bringing transparency, accountability, and a common understanding of how the state's educational dollars are spent. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 58, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 45, AB 504. Mr. Furutani, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 504 by Assemblymember Furutani and others, an act relating to peace officers.
Mr. Furutani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It is my great pleasure that I present AB 504, a bill that will enhance the training and education of peace officers as they receive on the topic of the Sikh faith, specifically as it relates to the interacting with persons carrying a kirpan. A kirpan is part of the 5 different religious articles that a baptized Sikh believer has to carry upon their body. Although it looks like a sword or a dagger, it's ceremonial and sometimes, though, as you can imagine, causes difficulty relative to the issue for public safety. We have been able to work closely with POST, the police training program, to make sure that this works in their program, and they're taking a neutral position. We have received no votes on this on the 2 committees it's already passed to. I asked for an aye vote, but I asked for co-sponsors first.
Seeing here no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. Pardon me, strike that. We cannot take up co-authors on a bill. Right? Not on the floor, sir. Clerk will open the roll on the bill. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 59, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 46, AB 526. Mr. Fuentes, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 526 by Assemblymember Fuentes, an act relating to physicians and surgeons.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would establish the Patient Protection and Physician Health Program within the State and Consumer Services Agency. This program would provide assessment, treatment referral, and monitoring of physicians who are impaired by substance abuse or mental illness. The program will be overseen by a committee appointed by the governor, the legislature, and the agency secretary. The aim of this program is to assist physicians before they pose a threat to patient safety. It is not a diversion program. Physicians enter the program voluntarily and agree to follow all program requirements, and if they do not meet these requirements, they must be reported to the medical board. Thank you, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 51, no 6. Measure passes. We'll move to item 47, AB 543. Ms. Ma, and clerk will slowly read.
Assembly Bill 543 by Assemblymember Ma and others, an act relating to parental care and making an appropriation therefore.
Ms. Ma. This is support, members.
Okay, thank you, members. AB 534 has support on both sides. The measure would allow for the implementation of the Nurse Family Partnership Program in California. This program would allow low-income first-time mothers to have the ability to be successful mothers and members of society. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no discussion or debate, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure passes. File item 48 is passed and retained. Move to file item 50, AB 579. Mrs. Huber, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 579 by Assemblymember Huber, an act relating to state boards and commissions.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Now is the time for reform of our state boards and commissions. We heard the governor talking about this today. We know that there are boards and commissions out there that are constantly being attacked as part-time boards and commissions. What we don't have is the data of what their workload really is. And this bill is a step in the right direction. It requires that the auditor audit the workload of the Integrated Waste Management Board, which makes $132,000 a year, and the Unemployment Insurance Appeals Board, where the members make $114,000 a year. The perception is that these are boards made up of termed-out legislators that get posh appointments to these boards and only have to meet once a month and make these huge salaries. We're feeling the pain here in the legislature. We're getting cuts of our own salaries. It's time that we apply this to all of our appointed boards and commissions, and let's start by having the auditor look at how much work these people are actually performing. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, no 0. Measure passes. We move to file item 51, AB 589. Mr. Cook, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 589 by Assemblymember Cook and others, an act relating to veterans.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill allows the California Department of Corrections and Rehab or local law enforcement to contract with county veteran service officers to provide assistance to incarcerated veterans and their dependents in presenting and pursuing any claims to state and federal benefits. The goal of this bill is to tap into federal money, which these people have already earned by virtue of their military service, and to help reduce recidivism by providing some kind of economic stability to inmates and their families. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 The clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. We move to item 52, AB 591. Mr. Delatorre, members, this is support. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 591 by Assemblymember De La Torre, an act relating to insurance.
Mr. Delatorre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 591 has two parts that have received, both parts have received bipartisan support. The first part creates a deterrent to bad actors regarding a payment or receipt of a kickback for a car insurance referral by increasing the current $1,000 penalty to $5,000. The second part ensures that information about health plans and health insurers is readily accessible by consumers. A consumer currently cannot receive information if they only have the marketing name of the policy that they have. Both DOI and DMHC require that consumers have the form number, which is an internal number that DOI and DMHC assign to these policies. Clearly, all consumers would not have access to that number. Therefore, they cannot have a regular conversation with the regulators. This bill will require them to track by marketing name in addition to the code numbers that they're given. Amendments taken in appropriations reduce the cost to $100,000. I urge your aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, noes 1. Measure passes. Move to file item 53, AB 601. Mr. Garrett, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 601 by Assemblymember Garrett, an act relating to motor vehicle insurance.
Mr. Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Current law, which is scheduled to sunset on January 1, 2010, requires each insurer doing business in California to pay a special purpose assessment of 30 cents for each vehicle insured in the state of California. This bill extends the sunset date on the assessment to January 1, 2015. The Department of Insurance uses the funds to carry out vital auto insurance-related consumer protection and education activities, which include responding to consumer complaints, serving as a mediator between consumers and insurers to resolve insurance claims, and investigating suspected violations of law. The fund also supports consumer education and outreach activities, including a great program called the California Low-Cost Automobile Insurance Program. The assessment makes it possible for the California Department of Insurance to maintain the staff needed for investigations to carry out its duties in a timely manner. Prompt investigations are integral to locating witnesses, while their ability to recall events and produce vital documents is optimal, as well as minimizing damages to victims and the number of victims. A prompt investigation is also pivotal in the California Department of Insurance's ability to seek protection or for an action against those offenders. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 62, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 56, AB 654. Mr. Mendoza, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 654 by Assemblymember Mendoza, an act relating to state teachers' retirement.
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm here to present AB 654, which has strong bipartisan support. and has not received any no votes. AB 654 defines regular interest as actuarially assumed rate of return on investments. It also would also require CalSTRS to assess district for late remittances of contributions and they reported contribution reports. I have no opposition. I respectfully ask for your vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those votes desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 57, AB 668. Mr. Liu, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 668 by Assemblymember Liu, an act relating to firearms.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. This bill, which is sponsored by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, extends the boundaries of a school zone to 1,500 feet for purposes of enhanced criminal sanctions for violating a gun-free area. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 59, no 60. Measure passes. We'll file item 58, AB 702. Ms. Salas, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 702 by Assemblymember Salas, an act relating to housing and community development.
Ms. Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 702 adds a veterans component to the Emergency Housing Assistance Program, which provides operating grants to emergency shelters. As we all know, veterans constitute at least 25% of the homeless population nationwide. AB 702 would require the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Housing and Community Development to determine an allocation for homeless programs specifically designed for veterans every year that the Emergency Housing Fund program is funded. The Emergency Housing Assistance Program contains an element for construction and capital development that was funded by Props 46 and 1C. Of the $250 million in this construction fund, only $7 million was allocated to projects that are specifically designed for veterans, and our veterans deserve more. Furthermore, members, the program, which provides operational grants to homeless shelters, brought in $2 federal dollars for every state dollars when it was funded. California has lost out on federal funds by not funding the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. This means all Californians, including our veterans, are losing much needed federal assistance. We cannot continue losing money by not partnering with the federal government, and we cannot allow our veterans to be underserved with existing programs. Thank you, and I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Members, when this came through initially, it was uncertain as to what allocation or if there would really be any allocation for veterans. I understand that has been worked out. I thank my fellow assembly member for working through that situation with us. So if there's any of you that have cast no votes, I'd appreciate an aye on this bill. Thank you.
Mrs. Salas.
Thank you, Ms. Hartley, and I respectfully ask for all of your aye votes.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 62, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 60. File item 60 is passed temporarily. Move to file item 63. AB 773. Mr. Liu, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 773 by Assemblymember Liu, an act relating to health facilities.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill seeks to improve the quality of care in California's nursing homes. This bill provides important information to all residents and their loved ones by requiring a long-term care facility to notify the primary contact of each resident when the facility receives a Class A or AA violation. These violations place patients in immediate jeopardy and are the most severe cases of nursing home abuse and neglect. We're working with the California Hospital Association and all stakeholders, and we'll be taking some amendments on the Senate side to try to resolve CHA's concerns. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 42, ayes 43, noes 11. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 65, AB 787. Mr. Hill, this is support. Mr. Hill. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 787 by Assemblymember Hill, an act relating to elections.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. AB 787 requires local government officials to notify voters of the amount necessary to mail a ballot if more than one first-class stamp is required. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing and hearing no debate, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 65, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 67, AB 807. Mr. Fuentes, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 807 by Assemblymember Fuentes, an act relating to restitution centers.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would require the CDCR to reopen the 2 restitution centers no later than 2010-11 fiscal year, would modify eligibility criteria to ensure that all beds are full with appropriate inmates. The cost to house inmates in prison is at least $97 per day, whereas the cost to house inmates in restitution centers is about $50 a day. On top of that, a third of the inmates' income while at the restitution center goes towards the cost of their housing. This bill is a common sense measure that deals with restitution to people who have been victimized. There is no opposition, and it has received no votes. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. We move to file item 69, AB 819. Mr. Calderon. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 819 by Assemblymember Charles Calderon and others, an act relating to intellectual property, piracy, and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, members, intellectual theft or piracy cost the entertainment industry, in particular motion picture industry, $42 billion last year, and probably over half of that was in California. We lose hundreds of millions of dollars, estimated maybe $300 million in tax revenues. It is a global problem with now organized crime getting involved. This is a measure that would help fund local programs to fight piracy. I want to thank my co-authors as well as Mr. Blumenfield, Mr. Jones, Mr. Tran, and Mr. Smythe. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 66, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 66, no 0 on the measure. Measure passes. Move to file item 71, AB 854. Mr. Arambula, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 854 by Assemblymember Arambula, an act relating to employment.
Mr. Arambula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill is designed to make sure that a licensed farm labor contractor or a registered garment manufacturer pays what they owe their employees for unpaid wage violations. The bill applies only when there is a final, non-appealable decision, and it gives the license holder some flexibility to meet its financial and legal obligations. There is no opposition to this bill, and it is supported by both labor and industry. It has received unanimous votes throughout the process, and I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 70, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 72, AB 857. Ms. Galgiani. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 857 by Assemblymember Galgiani and others, an act relating to workforce development and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Ms. Galgiani.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. California's unemployment rate has hit a 25-year high, and it currently stands at 11.2%. The surge of unemployed workers has led to a flood of calls to the state's unemployment insurance call centers, and many callers cannot get through by phone to get the assistance they need. I will further point out that when individuals must go through the interview process, the phone system contacts them at home, and if they're out looking for a job and miss the call, they do not get any kind of a message on their answering machine, and they have no way to know that they've been an attempt has been made to contact them, and then they are dropped from the list and are pulled from the application system for unemployment insurance. AB 857 will require the State Employment Development Department to have available in-person assistance in all comprehensive one-stop centers. The administration of unemployment insurance is federally funded. There's federal stimulus funding that's available for additional workload. This will be a cost saver because at the end of the day, state workers are duplicating the process by going through and having unemployed workers have to reapply a second time and have to go through the entire process over again because of the pre-recorded message system that we currently use. AB 857 is a simple measure that will allow out-of-work Californians the option of in-person UI assistance. I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Harkey?
Question of the author,
Without
please.
objection.
Thank you. Kathleen, I have in here that this will have very major state costs, and according to the Employment Development Department, it would take up to 1,000 new staff and supervisors to man the 256 one-stop career centers and Department Workforce Service offices throughout the state. And it would be likely over $10 million annually. Now, is that covered by federal stimulus funds?
Yes, and the federal stimulus money that we received, and we voted on that bill where we had the comprehensive bipartisan working group here, and we sent it over to the Senate. There is money for additional workload because with the higher number of unemployed workers, we have a higher number of applications, and the money is in the stimulus package that California is getting money from.
Okay, just one more question then. I know that when we did something in appropriations, we passed a bill for increasing benefits. They had it was admitted there by the EDD that they were on a Cobalt system and could not handle the extra workload till possibly 2011 when they got their equipment up to speed or their new computer. Is this? You're positive this? I'm sorry. I just want to be sure this is covered by federal stimulus dollars.
Yes, there's money.
Okay.
There's money. Actually, something was sent out to each of the county EDD offices saying that there is money for additional workload. They did not specify exactly how that additional workload would occur. My bill is suggesting that at each place we have a real person as opposed to just a phone health system that workers are currently going through.
Mr. Garrick?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the author, Mr. Speaker?
Without objection.
Thank you. Ms. Galgiani, I have a question regarding, does this creating a new mandate with no sunset associated with it as to the EDD's employment obligation at each of its one-stop shops?
I don't believe so. I don't.
That's of concern to me in terms of if it's an ongoing mandate, if it's paid for by the federal dollars, and those dollars are used, who will be paying for it on an ongoing basis, and is it truly necessary in today's electronic world to have a live person at each of the fully trained at each of the one-stop service centers?
I'm happy to look at taking an amendment to the bill to address what will happen when the federal funding is no longer available. But to answer your question about whether we really need an in-person, somebody at each office, I don't know about some of you and what you're experiencing in your district offices, but I'm getting a flood of calls ongoing because what's happening is people are attempting to call these offices. They're not able to reach a real person. My office even, we don't get to talk to a real person, and we're the legislature. We communicate with EDD representatives by email, only by email, and we're legislative offices. When you're a constituent who is burdened with being unemployed and is working as hard as you can to try to find a job, and the jobs aren't available out there, I think that the least that we could do for people is to not make the system much more painful by having them go through a system where they can't even talk to a real person and they are constantly getting a recording. This bill attempts to take federal money that we're already getting where we have money for additional workload already, and to provide some ease at a time when workers are going through a very painful time that was not by their own doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to conclude, I know the author. I know that her intent is that she has a well-intended motion with this bill, but my concern is creating a new mandate that is ongoing after those federal dollars are used. I'm going to stay off this bill at this time.
Mr. Ramia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage support of this bill. One-stop centers are designed to provide assistance to folks at strategic locations throughout the state, and they are funded through federal dollars. I believe they will only continue as long as there are available federal dollars, and given our current economy and unemployment situation, having the availability of these centers and staff at these centers to provide needed services will be a godsend to many of our constituents. I would strongly urge an aye vote on this bill. It does have an urgency clause, and that is simply because of the gravity of the situation. It's important we get people out there to begin answering questions and facilitating the unemployment insurance claims process. So I would urge an aye vote.
Ms. Salas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Many years ago, I used to work for the Unemployment Department, the EDD, and so I have a lot of experience with people coming into the office. At that time, there was a system where people actually came into an office, got their needs met, and their questions answered by a real person. I really believe that in this economic climate, that having a real person in an EDD office or on the one-stop job centers to answer those questions will do much to alleviate confusion, will actually add to the efficiencies of filing a claim, and I think that it's just a smart thing to do, so I fully support this measure.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Just very quickly, first I want to add on to something Ms. Salas just referred to. If we're trying to stimulate the economy, it's in the collective interest of everybody in California to get people who are capable of receiving and qualified of receiving unemployment insurance to get the money now so they can cycle it through the economy. That's a bipartisan goal that we share. I rose because I wanted to share, we heard in the Insurance Committee about this issue. And the staffer at EDD who spoke to us broke down in that presentation. And he did so because the pressures in that office are so enormous to try to actually deliver some help from the state at a time when all of us are trying to figure out what can we, practically speaking, tangibly do to deliver aid to people most in need in our state, from an economic standpoint for all of us, from the standpoint of being humane to the people who would receive this assistance, and from the standpoint of making sure that state services that we prioritize actually work. I urge an aye vote for Ms. Galgiani's measure.
Ms. Galgiani, you may close.
I'd like to just hammer on one final point, and that is that the system that we're currently using is wasting money. It's wasting staff resources that we have at EDD right now, because as it stands, they sign someone up to receive unemployment insurance. That person goes home. They're away from their home because they're looking for a job. They get 3 calls from an automated system. They miss the calls because they're looking for a job, something that we would want to encourage, and they're automatically dropped from the list, and they don't even realize it. Then when they have the problem, they can't reach anybody to try to get help and even learn that they've been dropped from the list because of the automated system. So what then happens is finally they have to start the process all over again. So we have an EDD worker start that application process with them all over again, duplicate the work, we pay for it a second time. I would suggest that this bill at the end of the day would actually save resources, staff time, and California money. I ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Members, the roll is open. All those voters desire to vote. Ms. Galgiani moves the call. File item 75, AB 919, Mr. Nava. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 919 by Assemblymember Nava, an act relating to mortgages.
Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is a very simple bill that's intended to provide transparency and openness in the mortgage lending process. All it does is require that a rider be attached to the lien filed with the county clerk recorder that provides a name and license number, if applicable, of the parties involved in a mortgage loan. We've seen with the mortgage meltdown, they're oftentimes very difficult to try to determine who exactly was involved in the transaction. This will make sure that we always know who participated. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 0. Ayes 58, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 76, AB 938. Mr. Fuhrer, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 938 by the Committee on Judiciary, an act relating to dependent children.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is a Judiciary Committee bill. It has no opposition. It's received only supportive votes, no votes. It's designed to implement a federal mandate regarding our foster care system, and the essence of the bill is to assure that the families of foster kids are notified when that child is brought into the foster care system and given an opportunity to share with social workers and the court the needs of those children. As has been said by others who advocate on behalf of foster care kids in this House, the parents of foster care kids in many ways are us. I urge an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 62, no 0. Measure passes. We will file item 80, AB 1006. Ms. Buchanan, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1006 by Assemblymember Buchanan and others, an act relating to state buildings.
Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you. This bill is supported by both parties, so I will be very brief. In short, when selecting the location for future state buildings in excess of 10,000 square feet, it asks the Department of General Services to consider the location of the clients being served and the location of the workforce. This is consistent with the intent of AB 32 and SB 375 and what we require of local planning decisions. I urge your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 8. Measure passes. Move to file item 81, AB 1011. Mr. Jones, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1011 by Assemblymember Jones, an act relating to public health.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, members, AB 1011 requires the Office of Health Information Integrity to report on how we can best access federal stimulus dollars related to health IT. The bill has no opposition, bipartisan support on both sides. Ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 65, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 82, AB 1017. Mr. Portantino, passed temporarily. File item 83, AB 1020. Mr. Emerson. Dr. Emerson, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1020 by Assemblymember Emerson and others, an act relating to swimming pools and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Dr. Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Assemblywoman Fiona Ma and myself introduced Assembly Bill 1020 because drowning is a preventable, but it's still the second leading cause of accidental death among children ages 1 to 14 in the United States. AB 1020 is a very important measure that will increase the safety standards for California's public swimming pools in order to prevent unnecessary drowning. In December 2008, Congress enacted the Virginia Graham Baker Pool and Spa Safety Act, requiring all public pools to install anti-entrapment drain covers. This bill seeks to bring California into compliance with the newly enacted federal law, which is necessary to allow local health officials to properly enforce these new regulations. Circulation entrapment occurs when a swimmer becomes stuck in a pool's drain suction and the pressure is so overwhelming that even healthy adults are sometimes unable to break free. If a child becomes entrapped, death or horrific injuries often occur. There were 74 incidents of circulation entrapment reported between 1999 and 2007, including 9 fatalities and 63 injuries, in which 54 of these incidents involved children under the age of 15. In 2008, a Panorama City, California, an 11-year-old girl almost drowned when her hair became trapped in a spa suction drain. AB 1020 will help eliminate the risk posed to our children when our public pools and spas do not have the proper safety devices. I urge your aye vote on this important measure.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, members. We have more pools here in California than any other state, and as we are going into the summer season, it's important to think about this bill and make sure that we are doing everything to protect our young kids, especially when they are in these pools. Drowning is the #1 cause of death in 1 or 0 to 4-year-olds. One death is too much, and we can do a lot to prevent unnecessary deaths due to unsafe drains. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you, members.
All discussion and debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 63, no 0. Measure passes. File item 8485 is passed on the measure. 63 0 on the measure. Measure passes. File item 8485. Passed temporarily. We'll file item 87, AB 1049. Mr. Tirico, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1049 by Assemblymember Tirico and others, an act relating to taxation.
Mr. Tirico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would add the Safe Surrender Baby Fund to the state income tax return forms voluntary contributions section. Has received bipartisan support. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters are to vote. All those voters are to vote. All those voters are to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 60, no 0. Measure passes. We'll file item 89, AB 1076. Mr. Jones. This is support. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1076 by Assemblymember Jones, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, members, this bill is the outgrowth of hearings held earlier this year designed to try to get more people out of our emergency departments and into primary care. The bill does 2 things. First, it includes Medi-Cal beneficiaries who have 2 or more chronic conditions, and those of you in the hospital emergency department 4 more times, into the Medi-Cal case management program. And second, it requires current Medi-Cal disease management benefits to include the designation of a primary care provider as a medical home. Bill has bipartisan support, no opposition, support on both sides. I ask for aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 67, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 92, AB 1096. Ms. Galgiani. Is she prepared? Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1096 by Assemblymember Galgiani, an act relating to elections.
My mic's not on. Oh, there it is. Okay. In the last 10 years, county election officials have shifted to using electronic methods to create and update precinct boundaries. And at the same time, political campaigns and data vendors have shifted to using these same electronic methods to produce their own precinct maps. AB 1096 requires information on precinct boundaries be made available in both print and electronic formats. It also requires election officials make information available to the public on all precinct boundaries, not just modified boundaries. Amendments in the Appropriations Committee remove the provision requiring information on precinct boundaries be provided to the Secretary of State. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 66, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 93, AB 1108. Mr. Fuentes, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1108 by Assemblymember Fuentes, an act relating to utility service.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. About half of the mobile home parks in our state are master metered, meaning that the utility provides gas and electric service to the park owner and the owner provides service to the residents. Utilities give mobile home parks a discount to provide this service. In PG&E territory, for example, this amounted to $67 million of a discount in ratepayer dollars over the past 3 years with little to no oversight. At the same time, it is simply unreasonable to expect that mobile home park owners to be able to provide the kind of safe, reliable service at reasonable rates to which residents of this state are statutorily entitled. That's why this legislature mandated that from 1997 on, all new mobile home park residents were to be served directly by the local utility. This bill requires that utilities begin to directly serve all existing mobile home park residents on a schedule that is fair and reasonable for ratepayers. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 All those voters are to vote. Mr. Fuentes moves the call. We'll move to file item 97, AB 1243. Mrs. Lowenthal, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1243 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal, an act relating to vehicles.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and colleagues. If any of you have ever driven on the 710 freeway, you'll understand why I have this bill. And if you haven't, just imagine the most crowded road that you've ever driven and double or even triple the number of trucks on that road. When there's an accident on this freeway, and there are plenty, in fact, there are the most truck accidents in the state on this freeway, it always involves a truck coming from or going to the ports. And you can't even just move them aside. You need a special tow truck. And even though we have a good law that regulates trucks on the road, it's hard to keep up with the sheer volume that we're talking about. So what this bill does is it recognizes how big the problem is and doesn't have all the answers, but it does say that all the stakeholders have to get together and start making plans to better deal with this freeway and the adjacent freeways. The advisory committee will consist of representatives from CHP, from Caltrans, MTA, and the 27 cities in the Gateway Cities Council of Governments, and will consult with affected industries, the trucking industry, labor organizations, and the San Pedro Bay ports. We need to figure out how we can best use existing resources and add new technologies and enforce the law on these busy freeways. This will prevent accidents, increase the efficiency of goods movement, and help achieve the clean air goals we talk about regularly. AB 1243 has received no votes and received bipartisan support in the Transportation Committee. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 54, noes 8. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 98, AB 1253. Ms. Fuller, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1253 by Assemblymember Fuller and others, an act relating to the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta.
Ms. Fuller.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 1253 requires the Independent Science Board of the Cal-Fed Bay Delta Program to conduct an independent scientific review of existing literature and studies related to fish predation in the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta to determine how significant the impact of predation is on threatened and endangered species and to recommend what steps might be taken to reduce its effect. There are some competing views about the impact of fish predation on threatened and endangered species in the Delta, so more review is needed. This will be paid for from funding from a non-governmental source, and it is my hope that this Independent Science Board of the Cal Fed Bay Delta program can help us reach more definitive conclusions. As the state deals with a severe water shortage that could cost up to 95,000 jobs, it is crucial that all factors affecting the Delta be looked at and addressed. The original version of this bill was substantially amended in the Water, Parks, and Wildlife Committee, and the current version of the bill has bipartisan support. I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Chair of Water, Parks, and Wildlife, I guess I had a role in that substantial amendment process, but I want to actually thank the author. She worked with us very patiently and very inclusively, and I think we got to a point where we've got a study that will not present any serious cost issues the way it's been drafted, and will bring forward some very useful information so that we can continue to look comprehensively at the many challenges facing the Bay Delta today. So request an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote, desire to vote. All those vote, desire to vote. All those vote, desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 61, noes 2. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 99, AB 1265. Ms. Ma, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1265 by Assemblymember Ma, an act relating to taxation to take effect immediately. Tax levy.
Ms. Ma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 1265 clarifies an uncodified section in the Business and Professions Code relating to veterans by classifying United States veterans itinerant vendors with a service-related disability as consumers of goods that they sell rather than retailers of goods. Placing honorably discharged veteran itinerant vendors in the consumer category enables these disabled veterans to sell their goods without having to apply for a seller's permit, file sales tax returns, or remit sales tax on their sales. These veterans will still have to pay sales tax on goods they purchase in the course of doing business. This bill is supported by the Board of Equalization, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and Caltax, and has received unanimous bipartisan support. Thank you, members.
I'm here. Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 65, noes 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 101 is passed temporarily. Move to file item 104, AB 1383. Mr. Jones, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1383 by Assemblymember Jones and others, an act relating to Medi-Cal, making an appropriation therefore and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, members, AB 1383 is sponsored by the California Hospital Association, the Daughters of Charity, and the California Children's Hospital Association, and supported by numerous other hospital associations and individual hospitals. The bill is modeled on a very successful effort that this legislature undertook 5 years ago in the nursing home context, where we identified a quality assurance fee and used that funding to pull down additional Medicaid dollars to improve our nursing homes. This bill takes the same approach with our hospitals, who, as you know, are facing dire financial circumstances. We have hospitals closing in this state. We have hospitals whose finances are backwards because they're getting inadequate Medi-Cal reimbursement. They're serving increasing numbers of uninsured. Their emergency rooms are overcrowded. This bill presents an opportunity to bring down $2 to $3 billion in federal Medicaid funding, enhanced funding as a result of the Federal Economic Stimulus Act, that we will not otherwise be able to take advantage of. We've had bipartisan support. There's no opposition. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Dr. Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to support this legislation because it's a way to draw down additional federal dollars for improving Medi-Cal reimbursements. In my district, I have a very large university medical center that lost $95 million last year. And if they continue on this route, they will be out of the business to provide medical education as well as care for those who are disadvantaged and less fortunate. So given the state of our economy, currently it would seem beneficial to take advantage of any federal dollars that we could draw down. I urge you to vote yes on this proposal.
Seeing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 1 on the urgency. Ayes 57, noes 1 on the measure. Measure passes. File item 105 is passed temporarily. We will move to file item 109, AB 1445. Mr. Chesborough, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1445 by Assemblymember Chesborough, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Mr. Chesborough.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 1445 will allow federally qualified health centers and rural health clinics to be reimbursed by Medi-Cal for a behavioral health visit that occurs on the same day as a medical visit. Currently, Medi-Cal does not reimburse for those same-day visits, even though there are federal matching funds for states that choose to allow same-day visits. California, however, does not take advantage of these federal funds. The bill was amended in appropriations to address the cost issue by requiring a rate readjustment for these multiple visits. The bill has received unanimous support and there is no opposition. It is for these reasons that I would urge your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 65, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 110, AB 1527. Mr. Liu, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1527 by Assemblymember Liu, an act relating to air pollution.
Mr. Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill would modernize and better coordinate our state agencies' air quality and climate change program funds. It takes a Carr Memorial program, Proposition 1B program, and an AB 118 program, and it allows them to work together and fund enhanced projects that get additional emissions reductions. The bill allows for these funds to be paired in cases where doing so allows the state to achieve additional air quality and greenhouse gas benefits. This bill is sponsored by CalSTAR, and there's no opposition. Respectfully request an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 63, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 111, AB 1559. Mr. Monning will take this up. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1559 by the Committee on Labor and Employment, an act relating to unemployment insurance.
Mr. Monning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill is sponsored by the California Workforce Association and is designed to facilitate the implementation of summer youth programs by local workforce investment boards. The recently enacted American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009 included $1.2 billion in funding for summer youth employment activities. This bill contains a number of provisions designed to facilitate the expenditure of this funding. Each of these provisions was contained in the ARRA itself or in the Federal Department of Labor's guidance letter implementing the summer youth funding. In essence, we need your aye vote to enable California to be eligible for the $1.2 billion in federal funding. I request your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure passes. File item 112 passed temporarily. File item 113, AB 102. Mr. Smythe, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 102 by Assemblymember Smythe, an act relating to parks.
Mr. Smythe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. For many, many years, the fate of the Santa Susana Field Lab in Ventura and Los Angeles County has been a very hotly contested issue. However, 2 years ago, with the passage of SB 990, which was a bipartisan effort that set forth the cleanup for that property, we were finally able to move forward beyond the controversy to some degree and get moving towards solutions. Another step now becomes, once the property is cleaned up, what do we do with that property? And that's what AB 102 tries to address. What this bill clearly does not do, however, is in any way circumvent the wording of SB 990 and the cleanup plan that has mandated. But this would do is put up a Parks Advisory Council that would comprise of of local stakeholders that would help determine the fate of that property once it's cleaned up. It's had bipartisan support as it's moved through the process, and ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 114, AB 580. Ms. Huber, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 580 by Assemblymember Huber and others, an act relating to water quality.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill deals with the overregulation of septic tanks in the state of California and the one-size-fits-all approach that was attempted to be passed on all of our counties through the State Water Resources Board. It is support, and I want to thank the bipartisan support that I've received. Assembly members Gaines, Logue, Chesbrough, Jeffries, and Nilsen in helping to come up with a solution to this problem, and I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Logue.
I, too, Mr. Speaker, like to throw my support behind this bill. I think it's excellent, and I want to congratulate Ms. Huber on it. I think it's got great bipartisan support. It's no longer one size fits all, and this is a win-win for the people of California. Thank you.
Mr. Gaines, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I also support Huber's bill and want to congratulate her for putting this together. I initially started off with a bill to repeal Hannah Beth Jackson's legislation, but it looks like she's worked hard in putting the right elements together, and I'm hopeful that the 1.3 million folks with septic systems in the state will get some regulatory relief. So I support it and urge you to vote.
Thank you. Hearing and seeing no further debate on the issue, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 61, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 116, AB 890. Mr. John Bettis. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 890 by Assemblymember John A. Perez, an act relating to the city of Maywood.
Mr. Bettis.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I request permission to use a prop.
Without objection, sir.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present AB 890, which seeks a legislative remedy to improve the water quality in the city of Maywood. Maywood is a small city in the east side of Los Angeles County where the residents are forced to drink water that looks like this, and like this. The residents of the city of Maywood receive their water from 3 different mutual water companies, companies whose boards of directors are comprised of property owners, but over 70% of the residents of Maywood are renters, and they have no say in the operation of the water companies, and their city has no say. This legislation simply provides a pathway for the city of Maywood to petition the Department of Health Services to evaluate the quality of the water and create a pathway to find another supplier for water in the city of Maywood if this water fails to meet the basic standards that people should expect in the state of California. This bill has received bipartisan support and no votes in either committee. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I supported this bill in committee. It's absolutely unconscionable that local government cannot deal with this issue. They were only left to deal with their state assemblymen, and that's why we're dealing with it today. It's unfortunate, it happens, but we've got to intervene and make sure these people get clean drinking water. I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Smythe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I too rise in support of the measure. I think this is one of the fundamental reasons why we come to the legislature, to actually make a difference in a community, and by taking these steps, we can really help improve the quality of life for the residents of Maywood, and I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 65, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 11, AB 51. Mr. Blakesley. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 51 by Assemblymember Blakesley, an act relating to energy.
Mr. Blakesley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this bill has support on both sides. AB 51 seeks to ensure that ratepayer dollars that are used for utility energy efficiency programs are dedicated to the extent possible to the actual incentives and rebates rather than administrative costs. Specifically, this bill would cap administrative costs at 10%. Currently, there are no administrative cost caps for utilities. In the absence of a cap, investor-owned utilities typically claim roughly 15% of all ratepayer monies for energy efficiency as administrative costs during the 2006 through 2008 cycle. Nothing in the statute prevents that percentage from increasing even more in future years. AB 51 is supported by TURN, the Division of Ratepayer Advocates, and has received a no vote. So we took numerous amendments in the committee. I ask for your support.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rise in support of this bill. This bill went through committee with no votes. It does, I think, a very important thing, which is make sure that it keeps the administrative costs limited and accountable. So this way the public goods charge can do what it's intended to do, which is create energy efficiency programs and serve low-income residents. I urge your support.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 54, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to item 82, AB 1017. Mr. Portantino. Mr. Portantino. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1017 by Assemblymember Portantino and others, an act relating to sexual assault crimes.
Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Last year, when it was discovered that the City and County of Los Angeles had large backlogs of unopened rape kits in their evidence lockers, public concern forced the City and County to make a commitment to test all of these rape kits. It is naive to believe that Los Angeles is the only community in the state that is not testing its rape kits. AB 1017 will require city and county law enforcement agencies to report annually to the Department of Justice the number of unopened or untested rape kits the agency has in its possession. We need to know the exact extent of this problem in our communities and address it. Second, it requires local law enforcement agencies to report to the Department of Justice the total number of sexual assault crimes reported in the jurisdiction if conviction of that crime would require the offender to register as a sexual offender. We currently do not have accurate numbers on sexual crimes being reported in California. AB 1017 will give us a better picture of what is happening in our communities. It has received bipartisan support, and I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 All those who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 64, ayes 65, no 0. Measure passes. Mr. Tirico.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If we can return to motions and resolutions, hereby request unanimous consent for the following authors to take up the following bills without reference to file today for the purpose of third reading. File item 120, AB 950. Dr. Hernandez. File item 121, AB 52. Mr. Portantino. File item 122, AB 359. Mr. Nava. File item 123, AB 366 by Mr. Ruskin. File item 124, AB 574, Mr. Chesbro. File item 125, AB 1310 by Dr. Hernandez.
Without objection.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to allow Assemblymember Hill to take up AB 650 without reference to file for the purpose of amendments. That's file item 118. I do believe there is an objection to that motion, so we'll need a roll call vote on that.
Without objection. Mr. Gaines?
Mr. Speaker, we oppose this motion. Would like a roll call vote. Thank you.
A motion to suspend the rules take 41 votes to allow AB 650 to be taken up. Mr. Tirico moves. Mr. Krikorian seconds. Clerk will open the roll. Mr. Tirico is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Gaines is asking for a no vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 45, noes 23. Motion carries. Mr. Tirico.
Remaining in motions resolutions, Mr. Speaker, at the request of the author, please remove file item 210 AB 672 by Speaker Bass from the consent calendar.
Clerk will note.
Mr. Speaker, at the request of the author, please send file item 145 AB 1119 by Dr. Emerson to the inactive file.
Clerk will note.
Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend the rules to allow AB 657, which was heard Thursday, May 28, 2009, and reported today with a due pass as amended recommendation from the Committee on Appropriations, to be ordered to the third reading file 2 legislative days prior to the day required under the Assembly and joint rules.
Without objection.
And the final motion, Mr. Speaker, I request unanimous consent to suspend the rules to allow authors to take up late amendments at the desk for the following items. File item number 3, AB 17, by Mr. Swanson. File item 128, AB 351, by Ms. Salas. File item 131, AB 609, by Ms. Conway. File item 141, AB 1409, by Mr. John Pettis. File item 142, AB 603, by Mr. Price. File item 164, AB 231, by Mr. Huffman. File item 182, AB 786, by Mr. Jones. And file item 210, AB 672, Speaker Bass, presented by Mr. Eng, without reference to file, also for the purpose of amendment. All of those items to be taken up immediately.
Without objection. Members will move file item 128, AB 351. Ms. Salas on amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 351 with amendments by Assemblymember Salas.
Ms. Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of taking up amendments to AB 351. The amendments are the result of meetings I've had with various stakeholders on this bill. They align with the recent State Board of Education action to affirm local control for school districts and to provide schools with greater flexibility to continue offering programs such as JROTC, marching band, and cheer team. My amendments also set clear minimum standards for these programs. The programs must support a course of study that includes at least 7 of the 8 PE content areas, and they must conform to the PE minutes requirements. In addition, instructors of these courses must be certificated employees. And lastly, students must pass a state physical fitness test before the 10th grade in order to continue being exempted from PE. I ask for your aye vote on these amendments and ask that the bill go to print and back on file.
Mr. Gaines.
Yes, our caucus is in opposition to the amendments and would ask for a roll call vote of no. Thank you.
Mr. Tirico is asking for an aye vote on a roll call. Mr. Gaines is asking for a no vote on the amendments. Clerk will open the roll. Mr. Tirico is asking for an aye vote. Ms. Salas is asking for an aye vote. Mr. Gaines is asking for a no vote. On the amendments, clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 37, noes 19. Amendments are adopted, out to print, back on file. Move to file item 3, AB. Did we do AB? Okay, very well. We'll move to file item 131, AB 609. Ms. Conway. On amendments, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 609 with amendments by Assemblymember Conway.
Ms. Conway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The amendments to AB 609 relating to county retirement makes a one-digit change to increase the limits in current law that restrict the amount of administrative costs that a county retirement system can change against the assets of that system. These amendments have been agreed to by all interested parties and have no known opposition. I ask for your aye vote on the amendments and that they go out to print and back on file.
Without objection, we have a roll call vote, a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Amendments are adopted. Out to print, back on file. Move to file item 141, AB 1409. Mr. Pettis on amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1409 with amendments by Assemblymember John A. Perez.
Mr. Pettis. Passed temporarily. Move to file item 142, AB 603. Mr. Price on amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 603 with amendments by Assemblymember Price.
Mr. Price.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the amendments to AB 603 remove controversial provisions relating to tenant protections in foreclosed properties and instead conforms major provisions of the bill to newly enacted federal law. The amendments also add Assemblymember Skinner as the author and make other technical changes. With these amendments, we hope to address some of the concerns that were raised by the opposition. I respectfully ask that the amendments be adopted and the bill goes out to print and back to file.
Mr. Duvall.
Question of the author.
Without objection.
Senator, I thought you were done. You can't have an amendment on a bill when it's your last bill last time.
Well, it's so good I didn't want to leave. Oh.
Seeing here no further debate, we'll ask for a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Out to print. Back on file. We'll now move to file item 182, AB 786. Mr. Jones on amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 786 with amendments by Assemblymember Jones.
Mr. Jones.
Mr. Speaker, members, the amendments offered here have been provided by a number of the opponents as a part of our continued good faith discussions to narrow disagreement about the bill and further clarify its intent. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Garrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the author, please.
Without objection, sir.
Oh, excuse me. They're amendments. I apologize, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing and hearing no further debate, we'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Out to print. Amendments are adopted. Out to print. Back on file. We'll move to file item 210, AB 672. Ms. Bass on amendments presented by Mr. Ng. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 672 with amendments by Assemblymember Ng.
Mr. Ng.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker and members, it's an honor to take up AB 672 for Speaker Bass for the purpose of amendment only. Specifically, these amendments clarify the process for obtaining letters of no prejudice that will allow bond-funded transportation projects to proceed without delay in the absence of bond funds. Respectfully ask for your aye vote and that this measure be sent out to print and back on to file. Thank you.
Seeing no debate or discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Amendments are adopted. Out to print. Back on file. Members, we're going to go back to some of the past temporaries. We're going to start with file number 135, AB 1570. Ms. Salas will be presenting on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1570 with amendments by Assemblymember Salas.
Ms. Salas.
Mr. Speaker, I rise for the purpose of amending AB 1570. These amendments represent an agreement with the Vice Chair of the Assembly of Veterans Affairs Committee, Mr. Cook, and the amendments have been shared with all the members of the Veterans Affairs Committee. The amendments do the following. 1, defines a nonprofit as a 501c3. 2, defines the types of services that are being provided by the nonprofit seeking a preference as a mental health service, housing or employment, and job training services. Number 3, allows a CDVA to audit a nonprofit organization that they have certified and establishes a mechanism for sharing the audit information. And 4th, removes language establishing a fee and sets a time limit on 2 years of certification. Number 5 states that the California Department of Veterans Affairs may certify a nonprofit that has a current certification and license from another state entity. And 6th, establishes a fund within the state treasury to accept donations that will be used to implement this article. Thank you, and I ask for your aye vote on the amendments.
Mr. Cook.
Yes, I want to thank the author for working with us on this and straightening them and urge strong support for the amendments.
Members, we'll have a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor on the amendments signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Amendments are adopted. Out to print, back on file. Members, will move to file item 156, AB 1571. Ms. Salas will be presenting. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1571 by the Committee on Veteran Affairs, an act relating to veterans.
Ms. Salas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. AB 1571 helps address the mental health needs of our returning veterans. AB 1571 requires that local mental health planning groups include a representative from a veterans organization and that local plans recognize the mental health needs of veterans. The bill has received bipartisan support in the Health Committee, Veterans Affairs Committee, and the Appropriations Committee. In order to address the opposition to this bill, I will be taking up amendments in the Senate if this bill is approved on this floor today. These changes will make it clear that veterans must be included in the local planning processes and that the Department of Mental Health inform the Department of Veterans Affairs of any county plans that have specific outreach or service plans for veterans and to gather the information about the number of veterans to be served. Since we have not finalized these changes, I ask this body to let the bill keep moving through this process so that we can continue to work at making our existing mental health care system more effective in serving our veterans, and I ask for your support. Thank you very much.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 56, noes 1 on the amendments. Ayes 56 on the urgency. Ayes 56, noes 1 on the measure. Measure passes. Members, we'll move to file item 163, AB 98. Mr. Delatorre. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 98 by Assemblymember Delatorre and others, an act relating to health care coverage.
Mr. Delatorre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The Assembly Bill 98 requires all individual and group health insurance policies regulated under the Department of Insurance to cover maternity services for women in California. This legislation closes a loophole exploited by health insurance companies in order to sell cheap coverage. This measure is similar to AB 1962, which was vetoed by Governor Schwarzenegger last year. HMOs are already required to include maternity services in any health policy they offer. Individual health policies do not. Group health plans, if you have over 15 employees, federal civil rights law requires that you provide maternity services. Individual health policies do not. AB 98 simply brings conformity to these policies that are sold in California. Women are pushed currently into state-funded programs such as Medi-Cal or access to infants and mothers because they do not have maternity coverage. Based on data from AIM as of 2007, about 6% of their total enrollment were enrolled in health insurance policies that did not cover maternity services. So the taxpayers were subsidizing these insurance policies. In addition, 10% of their total enrollment were enrolled in policies that did cover maternity services, but these services were inadequate or carried high deductibles. High deductible maternity services is as good as no coverage at all. In this year's CHBRP report, they estimated that the increase per member per month cost for maternity coverage would be $7.17 a month. That's what we're talking about. That's the difference that we are talking about here. That is why Kaiser and Blue Shield both support this measure. Members, I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Adams.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Members, I must regretfully rise in opposition to this bill. The fundamental problem with this bill is it prescribes to all Californians the same level of health care coverage irrespective of their personal condition. If my wife and I choose not to have children, why in the world should we have to be forced to buy coverage for maternity care services? It makes no sense to force somebody to buy a greater degree of care than they might otherwise need. Members, we have placed so many mandates on insurance companies that literally 2/3 of potential insurers don't even compete in our California markets. It makes no sense to continue the approach of mandating health insurance for everybody at the risk of removing health care for all. I strongly urge a no vote.
Mr. Monning.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of this bill. One of my constituents testified before the Health Committee on this, Miss Wendy Askew. She and her husband both had individual plans, both self-employed. They wanted to start their family, and she found out she wasn't covered, nor did her husband's plan provide coverage. I would ask members to consider as well, particularly self-employed small business owners who buy individual plans don't benefit from some of the mandates that the author, Mr. De La Torre, spoke about that are inherent in HBO plans and other HMO plans and other coverage. So I urge your aye vote, and I want you to remember that this is affecting real people, real families, and particularly self-employed. Thank you. I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Caballero.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of AB 98. This really is an equity issue as well as a health care issue. Maternity care is essential to the health of women and children. The prenatal services that women receive not only improve the birth outcomes, but it reduces the cost for newborn care. The average health care costs, including both inpatient and outpatient care, were about 10 times greater for a premature baby during the first year of life, about $32,000, compared to a full-term baby of about $3,300. We currently provide coverage for prostate care. Frankly, I don't use that service, but I'm willing to pay for it. Women and children deserve the same quality of coverage as men, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Right now, our foreclosure rate is 228% higher than it was last year. Our unemployment rate is over 11%. Revenues to the state are down substantially from capital gains and sales taxes. And the answer is not to increase the burden on California's taxpayers by increasing the number of mandates on health care. Mandates drive up cost. Mandates reduce access, and they reduce quality of care as health plans and policyholders try to battle the costs of higher premiums. And so, frankly, I think this is one of those additional mandates that's just going to make it more expensive for people to have health care in this state, and that's exactly the opposite direction we need to be going, so I'd urge your no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Delatorre.
Thank you. If Assemblymember Emerson will step out of the way, I can close. Talking about the taxpayers, again, AIM in 2007, these are real numbers. These aren't anything related to health insurance. These are taxpayer dollars that we are spending. 6% of their caseload comes from women who have no maternity coverage. 10% comes from women who have substandard coverage. So 16% of this state-funded program is from women who do not have the proper coverage. Addressing the issue of whether you should have to get coverage that you don't really need, again, the point by Assemblywoman Caballero, prostate cancer and other male-focused coverage is mandated currently. Breast cancer screenings and other female-focused health care is mandated currently. It is part of the risk factors in inherent in health insurance. You spread the risk among the whole pool. That is the whole point of insurance. And again, linking it to HMOs or group coverage, you should not be treated differently just because of the type of insurance that you've got. We need to end this disparity. $7 a month. That's all we're talking about here. It's not going to be the end of the world to cover these women and have these healthy babies. I urge your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 23. Measure passes. Members will move to file item 120, AB 950. Dr. Hernandez. Is he here? Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 950 by Assemblymember Hernandez, an act relating to hospice care.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill would allow a licensed and certified hospice program to operate an independent facility within its hospice license. The mission of this bill is to provide patients who are at the end of life and who may not have family or friends who can provide care at home, a residential-like setting with the necessary medical assistance. Currently, these patients do not have the choice of receiving care in a hospice facility that is completely consistent with the mission and goal of providing hospice care to patients and their families. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Having seen no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 57, noes 1. Measure passes. File item 121, AB 52. Mr. Portantino. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 52 by Assemblymember Portantino and others, an act relating to umbilical cord blanking and declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Portantino.
Thank you, Mr. Speakers and members. Many of you know that banking umbilical cord blood was the first bill I introduced on my first day in office 2.5 years ago. Continuing to push the issue this year, coming back with a $2 birth certificate fee to fund the program. This bill will save lives and save money. We estimate that there are thousands of Californians who are waiting to find bone marrow matches. At the same time, we are discarding 550,000 umbilical cords every year in the most diverse blood supply in the world. Again, let me repeat, this bill will help fund the program. It will not only save lives, it will save precious health care dollars and allow people to live out productive lives, because a cure will save lifetime treatment costs. It has broad bipartisan co-authors, I'm proud to say, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Dr. Emerson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise to support this legislation. I think this is one of the best things that we can do to help save lives. It's a very small cost, and it will see great benefits, and I ask for an aye vote on this measure.
Mr. Anderson.
I rise in support. I'm a co-author on this bill. I think that it's a common sense approach. We want to make these votes here count, and there's no better way than to vote for this. I encourage your vote.
Mr. Swanson.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of AB 52. My wife and I, we just had our 5th grandchild, and we had to pay for this service, and it was quite substantial. So I think that this is very wise, and in the long run, it will provide for great health care in the future. So I commend the author on the bill, and I ask for the aye vote.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in strong support of this bill. Many of us in this room have had experiences with some of the aspects of the science that's involved in this, and if you read what's going on in this, you know, this is a common sense bill, but it's one which is desperately needed, and I urge your support.
All debate and discussion having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. All those vote desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 58, noes 7. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 122, AB 359. Mr. Nava. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 359 by Assemblymember Nava, an act relating to cancer.
Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is Assembly Bill 395. Currently, the California Department of Public Health reimburses providers for breast cancer screening under the Every Woman Counts program that's done by analog mammography only. However, mammography providers are increasingly converting their equipment to digital, leaving large areas of the state without an analog provider. That means that women in some areas of California must travel over 2 hours in order to obtain a mammogram. In my district, there are over 2,000 women who are impacted by the lack of access to digital mammography. It's my understanding that this has support on both sides. I would ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 68, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 123, AB 366. Mr. Ruskin, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 366 by Assemblymember Ruskin and others, an act relating to Medi-Cal.
Mr. Ruskin.
Thank you. Make sure I have the right one. All right. Is there support on both sides on this?
It looks that way.
Good. All right. That's good. So AB 3, I just wanted to remind everyone of that too. AB 366 would provide reimbursement to hospitals for the cost of orthopedic implants for Medi-Cal and other patients. These implants will allow patients with bone cancer, particularly children, to avoid amputation. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 68, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 124, AB 754. Mr. Chesbrough, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 754 by Assemblymember Chesbrough, an act relating to Medi-Cal mental health services.
Mr. Chesbrough.
Mr. Speaker and members, AB 754 will clarify the obligations of state and local government and promote the efficient administration of the Specialty Mental Health Managed Care Program. It's also intended to increase timeliness of Medi-Cal payments to county mental health plans by clarifying the state's payment timeframes and responsibilities. The bill was on consent for the Health Committee and is supported by the California State Association of Counties, the Regional Council of Rural Counties, and many other individual local agencies. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Having seen no debate or discussion, clerk open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. Measure passes. Move to file item 125, AB 1310. Dr. Hernandez, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1310 by Assemblymember Hernandez, an act relating to healing arts.
Dr. Hernandez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, under current law, a health care workforce clearinghouse, which was created by SB 139, Senator Scott, is charged with collecting data from various health boards. Its intent is to establish an ongoing data stream of changes in California's health workforce and provide the necessary information needed to make complex policy changes to meet California's health workforce need. Currently, healing arts boards are not mandated to provide any of this information, and what this bill will do is require that all health licensing boards submit specific data on age, race, gender, practice location, and the type of practice to the clearinghouse. It fixes a necessary component of SB 139 and enhances the state's ability to address health care workforce shortages and also identify communities that have the highest need of health care professionals. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Having seen no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 67, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 150, AB 1315. Mr. Ruskin, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1315 by Assemblymember Ruskin, an act relating to Public Utilities Commission.
Mr. Ruskin.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Speaker. Our state constitution, Article 12, Section 3, defines what a public utility is in the state of California and subjects utilities to the ultimate control of the legislature. The legislature, in Section 5 of the Constitution, is granted plenary power over the PUC. These constitutional responsibilities of the legislature have great economic meaning and importance in the everyday lives of all of our constituents, as people, as businesses, and as service providers. This is my third bill in as many years regarding the PUC and the need to ensure legislative oversight. Last year's legislation, AB 1973, was more stringent than this bill, yet it received 27 votes on the Senate floor, including a number of Republican senators. AB 1315 this year calls for the Public Utility Commissioners themselves to designate the President of the Commission from among the members of the Commission. This bill also empowers the entire Commission, not just the President, to direct the PUC Attorney and Executive Director. I agree with the third reading analysis on this bill. With permission to read.
Without objection.
Quote, "The previous commissions were not accountable enough. The more recent commission is way too accountable, but only to the governor. Because the state constitution provides the legislature with plenary power to confer authority and jurisdiction upon the PUC, AB 1315 is an attempt to find the just right solution," end quote. I want to conclude by mentioning that this bill is sponsored by the Communication Workers of America, supported by the State Labor Federation, State Building Trades, TURN, and the Consumer Federation of California. I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Duvall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, permission to ask questions of the author?
Without objection.
Mr. Ruskin, there's a couple of things. I've been waiting for this bill to come up. First of all, can you tell me what is happening with the intent of the original bill, SB 33 in 1989, which this repeals? Why you don't like what's already there?
The
Because it appeals the Senate bill.
I'm sorry?
Let me ask another question. Okay. What is the problem you're trying to fix? I listened to your dialogue on there, and I'm trying to figure out what problem you're trying to fix.
The problem that I am endeavoring to fix here is that I think we've created, in effect, a super commission president. The Constitution very clearly says that the legislature has plenary authority over the commission. I am looking for a solution, and I think we found it with the help of the Utilities and Commerce Committee. I'm grateful for their efforts to work this solution together. We will, by having the chair of the commission chosen by the entire commission, we do several things. We return to the older method. We'll find a more collegial framework for working. We'll also, I think, have greater. The Commission will tend to listen more to the authority of the legislature because all of the members of the Commission will be involved in choosing the head of the Commission. All of the members of the Commission will have the executive director and the chief lawyer responsible to them. And because all the commissioners must be confirmed by the legislature, the governor appoints all 5 commissioners, but the legislature has to confirm all 5 commissioners. And so indirectly, therefore, by having all 5 commissioners appoint the head of the commission, we will in one fell swoop make the commission more collegial, eliminate the probability of a super commissioner, and also ensure that the legislature has more authority over the commission, which is what the Constitution really had in mind.
Okay, so what I got out of what you just told me is because the legislature gets to approve the appointments of the 5 commissioners that the governor appoints anyhow, that I'm a little leery of that because the Senate usually approves those, and I'm a little concerned that we're taking something out of the. I don't know that it's that broken yet. I know Mr. Peavy has done a decent job, in my opinion, but I'm just trying to concern that when we get another governor, whether it's Republican or Democrat, we're taking away his ability to appoint somebody to that chairship and to be able to be the head of that. So I'm not going to be supporting your bill today, but I'll watch it some more. But I did want to get these questions answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I've been on councils and commissions before, and I'm not so sure anything's broken here other than maybe the agendas aren't scheduled as somebody might like or whatever's going on. I really can't understand, but I think it hasn't really, it's not really broken, and I don't think we can discern what the reason of this is other than to change maybe the balance on the commission or to revoke authority from the governor. So I would like to request a no vote on this at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Jeffries.
Members, I just want to point out that I think this is a symptom of a bigger problem in California and potentially across the nation, where we continue to have these unelected, unaccountable bodies that the public cannot hold accountable for their decisions. This is just a symptom of what is wrong with the system, where we as legislators have deferred and given our power and our authority over periods of time to these bodies that are not accountable to the people. And it points out a flaw in the system where these organizations, these commissions, some are making incredible sums of money and doing part-time work at best. But in this case, it's just another symptom of why we have to take back the authority that is given to these unaccountable, unelected bodies and put them in the hands of elected officials so that the people can hold us accountable for the actions and decisions that we make. I encourage a no vote.
Mr. Ruskin, you may close.
Thank you. With reference to the most previous statement, I think that if someone is concerned that the decisions of the Commission are too distant from the legislature, my bill will actually remedy that. It will improve the situation by allowing all commissioners to select the head of the commission. It goes a long way to ensuring that one person on the commission doesn't have too much authority. So I think this is actually a remedy to the previous statement. It also ensures greater authority by us, the legislature, in whom the Constitution vested ultimate authority over utilities and over the Commission. And as to matters that have gone wrong, there are an innumerable list of times in which it has been obvious that the legislature's intent has been flouted by the Commission, with the establishment of, for example, the California Institute for Climate Solutions, which Legislative Council said was outside the Commission's constitutional authority. Examples when the legislative intent was completely ignored by the Commission. I think this is a reasonable solution. I thank the Committee on Utilities and Commerce. I thank the Chair and the staff for helping me work out this reasonable solution, and I ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Mr. Reskin moves the call. Members will now take up file item 164, AB 231. Mr. Huffman, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 231 with amendments by Assemblymember Huffman.
Mr. Huffman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. California's landmark climate change law, AB 32, establishes a concrete cap on global warming emissions and provides the Air Resources Board authority to establish regulations and an overall program for the state to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions. The law also authorizes CARB to establish fees to implement the act. How about that? Was that?
Mr. Huffman, is this on the bill?
This is the bill.
The amendments were withdrawn.
The amendments were withdrawn. I'm going to speak to that in just a moment.
Very well. Continue.
Great. AB 32 also authorizes CARB to establish fees to implement the act. This bill will facilitate government accountability over AB 32 by designating a specific fund, the Climate Protection Trust Fund, for any fee, fine, or penalty revenue generated by AB 32. It requires that revenue from these sources be placed into the Climate Protection Trust Fund in a way that would allow legislators and the interested public to track AB 32 revenue spending and to confirm that it is spent on AB 32 itself. The bill also helps wean AB 32 implementation off of the general fund. Since the bill was passed in 2006, the Air Board has used tens of millions of general fund dollars and borrowed from special funds for the administration of AB 32. During the last 3 budgets, the legislature has told the Air Board to implement a fee so that it can move forward with the program without general fund dollars. Given the state's current budget situation, it's imperative that the Air Resources Board implement that fee as soon as possible, and this bill requires that that be done by March 2010. Now, about the amendments, which is an important part of my presentation here. To address concerns of the opposition, I will be taking amendments in the Senate that I've worked out with Mr. Fuentes to strike certain language relating to how fees would be assessed and expended. I am also committing to continue working with the opposition to address their concerns as the bill moves forward. This is a bill that's supported by a broad coalition of environmental and labor organizations. It's important that we keep AB 32 implementation on track while reducing pressure on the general fund, and so I request your aye vote.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to rise in support of this bill and thank the author for the amendments that he's proposing to take as this bill moves forward. This is a very important measure, and the amendments that were clarified are going to further make sure that the raids that took place before on different special funds don't happen and will ensure the success of the AB 32 implementation, and I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Garrick.
I'm rising in opposition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'm rising in opposition to AB 231, the bill before us. This only further seems to create this perverse incentive to have fees that a bureaucracy can assess against businesses, and then the fees they live off of. It was addressed by my colleague from Riverside, Mr. Kevin Jeffries, and I think a lot of other colleagues here have the same feeling and concern. In a recent study that I've been doing as it related to some of the Air Resources Control Board, of which there are 35, each of them have their own separate fee schedule. In the South Coast Air Resources Board, they have a fee schedule consisting of 99 pages and close to 500 different fees. In San Diego, we only have 49 pages with only 290 fees. Maybe we should catch up with more fees. We seem to be lagging behind. No, I think that this fee, independent fee program, and letting these bureaucracies create their own fee schedules of which they themselves are able to dip into to either completely cover their expenses or add to and grow their bureaucracy needs to end. I urge a strong no.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I think that the current language really becomes more modest and more tailored in making sure that the fees that are going to be imposed are only those that are required to implement AB 32, which means it'll be less money that we need to share from our general fund, that we desperately need to fund schools and colleges and prisons and so many other things. So I do want to thank the author for working with all on the new language. It's much more tailored and it's a good language now. Thank you, and I urge an aye vote.
Mr. Valines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question of the author?
Without objection.
I'm just curious why the amendments were withdrawn. I don't know what the amendments were, but is there a reason they were withdrawn? And if I heard you correctly in your statement, are they going to be added later? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, Mr. Valines. I'll be taking the amendments in the Senate. The amendments were withdrawn because we were continuing to negotiate and hadn't quite gotten there.
Okay, well then that gives me great concern, and I just want to share that. But I'm going to read a sentence that should be the scariest sentence any of us could hear unless you substituted Air Resources Board for Cal EPA. This requires the Air Resources Board to adopt a fee schedule for sources of greenhouse gas emissions.
Mr. Valines, have you asked the Speaker for permission to read?
No, I didn't.
Would you like to do that?
I would love to. Can I read?
Without objection.
Thank you. Let me read it again, Mr. Speaker. I would say again, Mr. Speaker, that as we let these unaccountable agencies go for fees, we should read sentences like this often. Requires the Air Resources Board to adopt a fee schedule for a source of greenhouse gas emissions to pay for administering this. We can't give them carte blanche to continue to do fees like that. Also, on a bill that's so important, those amendments should be dealt with here, not later after you've posted a vote, especially if they don't show up. So I would urge a no vote and be very careful of Cal EPA or CARB or anybody else adding more fees to everything we're trying to do in the state of California.
Thank you. Ms. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have to oppose this bill. We just created a jobs tour. Mr. Logue took us. We went, there's our assembly group, and this was one of the agencies, and these are some of the fees and the fines that drives businesses out of California on a regular basis. Now, I understand that we impose these new regulations, but they already have the ability to mandate fees. I think this is an unnecessary step. We've just heard we don't know what the amendments are, so we don't really know what we're voting for here. And we can't continue to kill the goose that lays the golden egg, and we're doing it time and time again. I have seen thousands of bills coming through appropriations and this floor over the last few days, hundreds of bills, and it's unbelievable the cost of even producing these bills, let alone the end user who's going to have to pay for them. So I would strongly urge a no vote. We are in a crisis. We are high unemployment. We're driving people from the state. We're driving good employers from the state. And we need to get refocused here and focused on our bankrupt situation, our high unemployment, and how we can attract business to the state, not how we can harass them. Thank you.
Mr. Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in opposition to this bill. We're talking about a fee that's going to be used to dictate the purposes for which these funds are going to be expended. We're looking at something that the Act of 2006 is already told us what's going to happen. It's solely for administering the program. It's not to expand this program. It's not to get what we can and use it for whatever we want to. It is only to administer what we need for the program. So, in those reasons, I will be opposing this bill.
Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very concerned about the whole fee structure and Mr. Huffman's bill. I think the big picture is that we're all going to be taxed. And the estimates in terms of taxation for greenhouse gas emissions, which I think are questionable, especially when we exhale, that's a pollutant now. That's considered a pollutant. So when we take a look at taxing every individual in America $1,800 to $3,000 for the implementation of greenhouse gas control from an environmental perspective, I think we're in big trouble. The costs to our economy are going to be hundreds of billions of dollars. We're going in the wrong direction. This is the first step, and I urge a no vote.
Mr. Huffman, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to clarify.
Mr. DeVore.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I note with interest that this is listed by the California Chamber of Commerce as a job killer bill. I further note with interest that every last group listed in support of this measure is a group that does not provide employment to the hardworking men and women of the state of California, whereas virtually every group listed in opposition to this measure represents individuals who would be impacted by the enactment of this measure, individuals who represent factories, who represent companies that provide jobs, much-needed jobs for the state of California. Now, anytime we take and incentivize a bureaucracy by giving them the ability to impose fees to then fund their own operations, we set in motion a chain of events that essentially gives executive, legislative, and judicial authority to an empowered bureaucracy to go out and live off of the land, to live off of the hard-working people of the state of California, to fund their own operations, in essence, severing the funding of that agency from the decisions made by the legislature and the oversight of the people's elected officials. Now, ladies and gentlemen, California could be doing a lot more to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions if it so desired. We could, in fact, if we were serious, lift the now 32-year ban on the construction of modern nuclear power plants, a ban that only 5 other states have, and those are also considering lifting that ban, to be more like France. It seems like my friends on the other side of the aisle seem to love everything about France, their nationalized healthcare system and their industrial policy, but seem to turn a blind eye to the fact that they produce 80% of their power from nuclear power, which is why they can produce the same unit of goods and services that we do here for 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions that we do. Now, what's going to happen with this bill and others like it is it increases the cost of doing business in the state of California, causing a perverse disincentive to manufacture things in California, leading, ironically, to the importation of more goods and services from out of the state and out of the nation, leading, again, ironically,
to increase global greenhouse gas emissions. Because you see, California is not an island. As much as we would like to think that we're an economic island, somehow cut off from the rest of the universe, we are not. And so by disincentivizing the production of goods in California, where we are the most electrically efficient state in the Union, what we then do is
30 seconds, Mr. DeVore.
What we then do is encourage the production of goods in other nations that do not have these burdensome regulations, and then cause Californians to have to import to their shores what they used to make here at home. Ladies and gentlemen, please, please consider what you're doing to the people who work for a living in this state and vote no on this measure.
Mr. Huffman, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As sometimes happens on this floor, we've wandered quite a bit from the bill that's actually before us. We've taken a little tour de France. We've talked about nuclear power. We've had phrases used that describe this bill as giving new fee authority to CARB, as requiring them or advising them to do something as if they weren't already empowered to do so. Let me be very clear about the bill in front of you, because I think that's important. This bill does not create any new fee authority. AB 32 creates the fee authority for CARB. My bill neither expands nor contracts the fee authority for AB 32, and the amendments that we've taken are very much intended to make that clear. What the bill does do, quite simply, is it says CARB needs to hurry up and exercise that fee authority so we can get it off the general fund at a time when we don't have enough general fund dollars to pay for schools and health care and parks and everything else that is on the chopping block right now. And it does a second thing. It says that when you go out and collect those fees and the penalties and fines and other things, again, they're not created by my bill, but are in the four corners of AB 32, you need to put them into a dedicated trust account so the whole world can make sure that those funds are being expended in an accountable way. That's all this bill does. We've taken amendments to at least remove some of the opposition. We're going to keep working on it as it goes forward, and I respectfully request your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 28, measure passes. Please to note, pursuant to Assembly Rule 77.2, I am re-referring file item 128, AB 351, Ms. Salas, to the Education Committee. Members will move to file item 118, AB 650, Mr. Hill. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 650 by Assemblymember Hill, an act relating to property, making appropriation therefore, and declaring an urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise for the purpose of amending AB 650. The amendments before you simply remove the urgency clause of the bill. I ask for your support on the amendments and for the bill to be placed back on file.
Mr. Gaines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm in opposition to these amendments and would like to request a roll call vote. Ask all Republicans to vote no. Thank you.
Very well. Mr. Hill is asking for an aye vote on the amendments. Mr. Gaines is asking for a no vote on the amendments. I have a roll call. Clerk will open the roll. Clerk will open the roll. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. On the amendments, 48 ayes, 25 noes. Amendments are adopted. Out to print. Back on file. We'll move to file item 190, AB 929, Mr. Blakesley, presented by Mr. Smythe. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 929 by Assemblymember Blakesley, an act relating to agricultural resources.
Mr. Smythe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, AB 929 simply provides the Department of Conservation with greater flexibility to preserve agricultural lands that offer important benefits that are compatible with agriculture, such as flood protection, wildlife habitat, and open space. Ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 69, noes 0. Measure passes. Take up file item 141, AB 1409. Mr. Pettis on amendments. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1409 with amendments by Assemblymember John A. Perez.
Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I prepared amendments for AB 1409, which further clarify that the bill does not affect county employees while ensuring the integrity of the open bidding process. The amendments further the definition of force account and day labor for the purpose of county highway projects. I respectfully ask for an aye vote and request that the bill be sent out to print and back on file.
Members, this will take a voice vote on the amendments. All those in favor signify by the usual aye. Any opposed? Amendments are adopted. Out to print, back on file. Members will now take up file item 200, AB 1300. Mr. Fletcher, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1300 by Assemblymember Fletcher, an act relating to fire protection.
Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, California has seen the devastating impact of wildfires. In San Diego, we've been hit particularly hard in 2003 and 2007. It impacts not only our citizens and the environment, but state and local government as well, with the tremendous cost associated with dealing with these natural disasters. Assembly Bill 1300 will provide incentives to clear dry bush from land and transplant it to a biomass facility where it can be converted into renewable energy. This requires no general fund money and will help remove wildfire fuels and create defensible space in an environmentally friendly way. It's been a collaborative effort with numerous stakeholders and enjoys broad bipartisan support. I would respectfully request an aye vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hearing and seeing no further debate, hearing no debate, clerk open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 71, noes 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 140, AB 524. Ms. Bass, presented by Mr. Fuhrer. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 524 by Assemblymember Bass and others, an act relating to privacy.
Mr. Fuhrer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of Ms. Bass, I am pleased to present AB 524. This is legislation concerned with the dangers that are created when paparazzi accost their subjects. The invasion of privacy is bad enough, but there's also an endangerment of people in the communities in which this occurs. So Ms. Bass has offered this legislation, which, as amended, says that's a violation of our civil code for defendants to use illegally obtained photographs. And the violation is if the person sold, transmitted, published, broadcast, or used any image or recording with actual knowledge the images or recordings were obtained illegally, that is by paparazzi in violation of laws, and actually paid some money to get those images and photographs, then those would be illegally obtained and subject those who publish these photographs to civil sanctions. It's a bill about which I know Ms. Bass feels strongly because of the safety implications and the invasive nature of paparazzi, and I urge an aye vote.
Hearing and seeing no debate, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 9. The measure passes. Move to file item 195, AB 1408. Mr. Krikorian, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1408 by Assemblymember Krikorian and others, an act relating to subdivision map approvals.
Mr. Krikorian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, California faces water shortages of unprecedented degree now, so much so that builders are unable to proceed with development of subdivisions because they can't get water supply confirmation that there's available water supplies to allow that development to go forward. AB 1408 is a measure that tries to address that problem and encourage new construction of new development while also encouraging and incentivizing aggressive new water conservation measures so that we achieve both economic development and environmental protection goals. AB 1408 provides an optional tool which builders and water suppliers can agree to use to secure reliable water supplies for new development. AB 1408 doesn't eliminate other approaches to secure water supplies that are available under current law. It merely provides another optional alternative tool that a developer can choose to use or not use. AB 1408's program can only be used by mutual agreement. No developer would ever be required to exercise this alternative. This bill will give developers full credit for water conservation measures that are used in the development to reduce the projected water demand of that development on site. It will also provide that the measures remain in place and durable over time. AB 1408 provides a way to notify original and subsequent homeowners of their unique water conservation obligations that were a condition precedent for the development being built in the first place. AB 1408 really gives developers a way to proceed with projects that otherwise might not be built because of inadequate water supply. It's cost effective, it fulfills both our business objectives and our environmental protection objectives, and this is an approach that I think is a novel and new way to encourage the development, the advancement of both of those goals. Now, we passed out AB 300 off of this floor last week by Ms. Caballero, which is a good bill. AB 1408 also is a good bill. They come to this policy with slightly different perspectives. I intend to continue to work very closely with Ms. Caballero and with the sponsors of her bill and encourage the sponsors of my bill to move together to a collective solution so that we can get everyone on the same page and really do some innovative work in pursuing both our environmental and economic development goals. So with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mrs. Harkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, or Mr. Speaker, excuse me. I'm on the council again. I rise in opposition to this. This is not, it's touted as being just another optional tool when in fact it could create undue pressure on the building industry that right now is struggling. If you look at the notice, the opposition, California Building Industry, California Business Properties Association, California Chamber of Commerce, California Apartment Association, American Council of Engineering Companies, Desert Water Agency, East Valley Water Agency, Western Electric Contractors, and the list goes on and on. Local municipalities or water districts already have the opportunity to create these programs. We should not be assisting it further or creating pressure on our building community right now to supply water for water and create it, or to assume that this is an option. This will become a mandate. I can guarantee you it's going to apply pressure on them, and it will increase the cost of building. Thank you.
Mr. Nava.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of Assembly Bill 1408 because it provides an innovative and optional way to allow homes to be built without requiring any new water supplies. The result will be sustainable housing that is good for the environment. No developer is required to use this. This is simply available if a developer and a utility decide that this is the route to build homes without adding additional stress on critically short water supplies. The optional program created by this measure will allow homes to be built in water-strapped areas. Many assurances are built into AB 1408 to ensure lasting and verifiable water savings. Finally, this measure will result in water conservation now. Urge an aye vote.
Mr. Arambla.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
colleagues, as oftentimes happens when there are competing bills on this floor, there can be some friction created. I rose when AB 300 was on this floor and urged its consideration, its passage, and asked that it be dealt with on its merits. I rise today to urge that we approve AB 1408. I know that, or I hope that somewhere down the road the two authors will find a way to perhaps merge the bills. And for today, I would ask that we support AB 1408. I think there is a good policy behind the bill. I believe that it furthers the discussion, and for these reasons, I would ask that it be addressed on its merits and that we approve today AB 1408.
Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise in support of this legislation. I think it's a very important piece of legislation that allows for the kind of flexibility, allows for the mutual agreement between utilities and between developers. And much in the way a previous speaker has commented, it addresses similar areas that we took up last week. And I think it provides exactly the type of policy we need in allowing for development and conserving water in this important environment. So I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Krikorian, you may close.
Thank you, and thank you, colleagues, for those comments. The one exception I take is Mr. Arambula. These are not competing bills, but thank you for those comments. As far as I'm concerned, these are two complementary bills that deal with similar issues, and because I have such immense respect for Ms. Caballero, I'm confident that we can work together to try to merge these into a single bill when we get into the next House that will be innovative and productive policy. So with that, I ask for your aye vote.
All debate having ceased, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Mr. Krikorian moves the call. Members, we are preparing to lift calls. Any member at the vote kiosk should postpone or complete their business now. The vote kiosk will be temporarily deactivated during the lifting of the calls. Members, after this week's deadline, the problem with the computers will be resolved. Members, we're prepared to take up file item 189, AB 900. Mr. DeLeon, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 900 by Assemblymember De Leon and others, an act relating to water diversion.
Mr. DeLeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, as well as members. AB 900 would require the monitoring of water diversions in the Delta. According to the Delta Vision Blue Ribbon Task Force, an estimated 5% of fresh water flows from the Delta watershed and is in fact diverted by farmers within the Delta every single year. To put that in context, the entire Southern California climate takes probably 4% of the water flows from the Delta every year. This is a measure that's bipartisan, has support on both sides. Members, I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Have seen and hearing no discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 76, no 0. Measure passes. Mr. DeLeon, we're going to take up your other two bills after we lift the calls. We've already deactivated the computers. Members, we're prepared to lift the calls. Mr. DeLeon, we're going to go ahead and take up your next bill, file item 39. Yes, to reference the file. File item 39, AB 451. Mr. DeLeon, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 451 by Assemblymember De Leon, an act relating to public school accountability.
Mr. DeLeon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, as well as members. AB 451 establishes a basic framework for the direction of federal funding, including Title I for needy pupils for our lowest achieving schools here in the state of California. Those are specifically in year 4 or 5 or beyond program improvement. This is a measure that has received bipartisan support in the Assembly Education as well as Appropriations Committee with no votes. Members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote on AB 451.
Seen and hearing no debate or discussion on the issue, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 71, noes 1. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 175, AB 513. Mr. DeLeon, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 513 by Assemblymember De Leon and others, an act relating to health care coverage.
Mr. DeLeon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, as well as members. 87% of women in California begin breastfeeding their babies in the hospital. However, many new members quit breastfeeding only after a few days or weeks because they don't have the support they need. AB 513 will ensure that HMOs and insurers cover the cost of quality breast pumps and access to lactation consultants for new mothers who choose to breastfeed their babies. The evidence is quite clear. Let me underscore that all major health organizations recognize that breastfeeding is one of the most important things a mother can do for her child. Every mother and her baby deserve the chance to breastfeed, and this measure will ensure to help and will ensure that. For these reasons, members across the board, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, as a mother of two children and a strong supporter of breastfeeding and recognizing the fact that it has so many benefits for the child and for the mother, this is not something that I can support, however, at this time because this requires an additional mandate on the health plans with more than 48 mandates already in place with the cost of having insurance that will likely go up as a result of this. I would have to rise in opposition, although I do support your goal of getting more women to nurse. Thank you.
Mr. DeLeon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strickland. I do appreciate your comments, and I do take your concerns very seriously.
Pardon me, Mr. DeLeon. I see two other mics that just went up. Mrs. Carter, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I rise in support of AB 513. Many women who wanted to, but they couldn't afford breast pumps or a lactation specialist who would have been able to show them the proper way to nurse. And so as a co-author of this bill, I ask members to support it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. De Leon, for carrying this bill.
Mr. De Leon.
Thank you very much, Ms. Carter. Just one quick added footnote. The Chabert analysis is very minimum with regards to the cost of the private sector, roughly about $1 million. The one thing I want to add to what Ms. Carter stated, 64% of white women in the state of California breastfeed. When we talk about African American women, approximately 34% of African American women breastfeed, 32% of Latina women breastfeed. There's a clear correlation with regards to poverty, and all the statistics and evidence shows us clearly that there's simply nothing healthier for a baby, for a child, with regards to ear infections, the immune system, and growing up healthy than a mother's breast milk. So, colleagues, I respectfully ask for your aye votes.
Seeing and hearing no further debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 27. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 82. Pardon me. File item 112, AB 82. Ms. Evans, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 82 by Assemblymember Evans, an act relating to dependent children.
Ms. Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill attempts to enact a few more safeguards for the process by which children in foster care get prescribed psychotropic drugs. As amended in the Assembly Appropriations Committee, AB 82 will establish a pilot project in 3 counties to implement these requirements. And the bill has support on both sides. I would ask for an aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 72, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 84, AB 1030. Mr. Blumenfield, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1030 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to renewable energy systems.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you. Rise in support of AB 1030. You ever drive along the highways and you're looking at all the sound wall as you go by and you wonder, how come there's no solar on all that? I see all this great sun hitting the sound walls. Couldn't we have another benefit here? Well, I wondered that, and so I decided to do a bill. Now, this bill won't create that, I'm sorry to say. But it is the first step toward it. What it does is, because when we looked into doing that, it was a little too expensive to do it right off the bat. We looked into it, and this bill is a common sense way to get us moving in that direction. It would make key solar and wind energy generation information available to renewable energy developers so they could develop proposals for installing solar and wind energy projects along our transportation corridors. Under this bill, the Institute of Environment at the University of California, Los Angeles would create dynamic maps that use geographic information to show Caltrans property that have great promise for renewable energy. There's some really cool stuff online if you go and see. They've done some of this mapping already for the city of LA and the city of San Francisco. This gets us in that direction. It would also encourage prompt consideration of renewable energy proposals by requiring Caltrans to respond within 30 days whether a plan would be compatible with the current and projected uses. With that, I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate on the issue, clerk will open the roll. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 75, no 0. Measure passes. We'll move to file item 85, 1031. Mr. Blumenfield, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1031 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to energy.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you. I rise in support of AB 1031. Local governments were permitted last year to take advantage of net metering savings by renewable energy systems installed in multiple locations to lower electricity bills for designated accounts. This bill proposes to extend these net metering savings to state universities, CSU and UC campuses, and certain JPAs. The bill also clarifies that community colleges can indeed apply for net metering credits to lower charges in their designated account from renewable generating facilities up to a maximum of 1.5 megawatt. The ability to extend utility bill savings to state universities during these tough budget times seems like a very practical step to take right now. Last year, the Assembly passed the net metering bill by Assembly Member Laird, with certain joint powers authorities included, and I ask for your aye vote on this bill.
Seeing and hearing no debate or discussion, clerk will open the roll. All those voters are to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 74, no 0. Measure passes. Now move to file item 105, AB 1390. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1390 by Assemblymember Blumenfield, an act relating to school safety.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you. Rise in support of AB 1390, Safe Schools Bill. This bill, I was shocked to learn this when I was told that when a gun is used on campus, that sometimes the municipal police are not notified. This bill is simply places a requirement on district school police to notify the municipal police electronically, so it won't cost anything, about the fact that there was a gun on campus. Basically, this nationwide, more than 350,000 students' expulsions and suspensions for firearm and other serious incidents took place in 07-08. Yet under the existing law, some such crimes are not deemed serious enough to trigger the expulsions and report to local law enforcement. This bill was double referred and received no votes in the policy committees. Thank you. And I ask for your aye support.
Seeing no debate or discussion on the issue, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters are to vote. All those voters are to vote. Clerk will close the roll. Tally the votes. Aye 73, no 0. Measure passes. Now move to file item 166, AB 262. Ms. Bass, presented by Mr. Fuentes. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 262 by Assemblymember Bass and others, an act relating to energy.
Mr. Fuentes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Carrying this bill today for Madam Speaker, this bill is in anticipation of the $1.4 billion that California should be receiving under the Federal American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, directed for energy-related activities. These programs and projects should be administered by the state's energy and water agencies and must adhere to the principles of accountability while promoting energy efficiency, water conservation, the development and use of renewable energy resources, the protection of the environment, and green job training. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing and hearing no debate on the issue, clerk will open the roll. All those vote who desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters are to vote. All those voters are to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 55, noes 10. Measure passes. Members, we are prepared to lift the call. I'm going to ask everyone at the kiosk to please finish their business. Finish your business. The kiosk will be temporarily deactivated. Mr. Berry, are you finished? Members, we're going to lift the call on file item 72, AB 857, Mrs. Galgiani. Lifting the call, file item 72. Clerk will post. Lift the call. We're lifting the call on file item 72, AB 857, Galgiani. All members vote as desire to vote. All members vote as desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 59, noes 12. On the urgency, ayes 59, noes 12 on the measure. Measures adopted. We're going to move to file item 93. File item 93, AB 1108. Mr. Fuentes, clerk will post. All those voters who desire to vote. All those voters who desire to vote. All those voters who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 42, noes 28. Measure is adopted. We're going to move to file item 146. 146, AB 7, Mr. Krikorian. Clerk will post. All those voters who desire to vote. All those voters who desire to vote. All those voters who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 60, noes 14. Measure passes. We're going to lift the call on file item 150, AB 1315, Mr. Ruskin. Clerk will post. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 43, noes 27. Measure is adopted. We're going to move to file item 174. 174, AB 489, Mr. Huffman. Clerk will post. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 44, noes 30. Measure is adopted. File item 183. File item 183, AB 798, Mr. Nava. Clerk will post. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. All those voters desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 50, noes 25. Measure is adopted. We'll move to file item 186. File item 186, AB 838, Mr. Swanson. Clerk will post. All those voters desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 49, noes 30. Measure is adopted. We'll now move to file item 195. 195, AB 1408, Mr. Krikorian. Clerk will post. All those vote as desires to vote. 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 Close the roll. Tally the votes. Ayes 34, noes 32. Mr. Krikorian notices reconsideration. Now move to file item 201, AB 1343. Mr. Huffman, clerk will post. All those vote as desires to vote. All those vote as desires to vote. All those vote as desires to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 46, noes 29. Measure passes. We'll go back to file item 173. File item 173, AB 479, Mr. Chesbrough. Clerk will post. All those vote who desire to vote. 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 Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 41, noes 31. Measure passes. Members, we are now at the consent calendar. If there's a member wishing to remove an item from the consent calendar, please say so. If not, clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 671 by Assemblymember Krikorian, an act relating to the Golden Shield Award.
Clerk will open the roll. All those vote as desires to vote. All those vote as desires to vote. All those vote as desires to vote. All those vote who desires to vote. All those vote as desires to vote. All those vote as desires to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. 75 ayes, noes 0.
Assembly Concurrent Resolution 49.
75 ayes, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 157.
Ayes 75, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 952.
Ayes 75, noes 0.
Assembly Bill 1486.
Ayes 75, noes 0.
And Assembly Bill 1543 with urgency.
Ayes 75, noes 0. On the urgency, ayes 75, noes 0 on the measure. Members, this concludes the business on the daily file. All other items remaining will be passed and retained. All motions shall be considered. Members, the schedule for floor session is as follows. Tomorrow, Wednesday, June 3rd, floor session from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Other announcements by the presiding officer will be as follows. Please be advised of the following deadline. June 2nd is the last day to amend the bill to add or delete an urgency clause. June 2nd is the last day to amend measures on the Assembly floor. No committee may meet without a JR 61 waiver prior to June 8th except to hear a bill that is referred to committee pursuant to AR 77.2. There will be no floor ceremonies until after June 5th. We'll now move to adjourn in memories. Mr. Knight.
Members, I rise in great sadness to talk about a young man of 31 years old who died on May 21st while flying a T-38 trainer at Edwards Air Force Base. Captain Graziano was assigned to the test pilot school, which his motto is ad inexplorata, which means toward the unknown. It's exactly what the test pilot school does. It pushes the envelope of aircraft. Captain Graziano was just set to work in the test pilot school over his one-year curriculum when his trainer went down with another passenger, Major Lee, on board who got out. Captain Graziano was a war veteran with over 100 sorties in Afghanistan and Iraq, and he is survived by his wife. This is exactly what happens with this type of test flight at the test pilot school. This is our second airplane to go down in the last 3 months, and this is only the second death in 8 years. So we in the high desert know that this is a tough business and that this is very dangerous, and our hearts and our prayers go out to the family.
Thank you. Mr. Pettis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I'll be brief. I'd like to ask that the Assembly today adjourn in memory of Professor Ron Takaki, Emeritus Professor at the University of California at Berkeley and a friend of several members of the legislature. Professor Takaki was really a groundbreaking scholar in the United States. He taught the first class in African American Studies at UCLA and offered the first PhD level program in ethnic studies anywhere in the United States. He was born and raised in the Palolo Valley of Hawaii amongst plantation workers, Japanese American plantation workers, and studied in Ohio and came and finished his studies here in California, where he made a tremendous mark. He was one of those amazing scholars who was able to take an area of scholarship that nobody else had invested in prior to his time and make it accessible to so many people. He was truly the architect of much of the progressive education with respect to American studies and ethnic studies that we see coming out of the Berkeley campus, and he touched so many lives. And as he died last week after a battle with multiple sclerosis, I wanted to ask this body to adjourn in his memory, and I know a few other members would like to add some words in memory of Dr. Takaki.
Thank you. Mrs. Skinner.
Yes, Professor Ron Takaki was also my professor when I was an undergrad at Cal, and he was really a remarkable teacher, a remarkable scholar, and a great progressive activist. And he supported me very strongly and encouraged me as I got involved in politics as a student and ran for the first time as a student for the Berkeley City Council. He also just led, or rather inspired, so many of his students to go on to be very strongly engaged in our community and political life. The other thing about Professor Takaki, which John didn't mention, is he was a brilliant surfer and could really hang 10. And his battle with multiple sclerosis was particularly hard on him, given that he could then no longer surf. He lives in my district, or did live in my district. His family is there. He leaves a wonderful family, and I ask also that we adjourn in his memory.
Mr. Furutani.
I think, simply put, the way you would describe Ron Takaki is an activist scholar. Someone, when you use the term pioneer, is not an overstatement. He was, for example, one of his first teaching positions, the sponsor for the Black Student Union at Worcester University. He then also wrote books on African American studies, Hawaiian American studies, Asian American studies, labor studies, and was an innovative person that looked at academia as a vehicle for activism. I think his impact on the multiple numbers of students that he taught at UCLA and Berkeley and other campuses will join us in this particular special memory of a very special person. I urge we adjourn in his honor. Thank you.
Ms. Simana.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I know we're all anxious to leave, but what I wanted to do are two things. First, thank Mr. Pettis for bringing this adjournment forward, but secondly, to leave with this body that Dr. Takaki was what I would call one of the vanguard of a post-racial society. In fact, as we continue to engage in all of our discussions going forward with President Obama at the helm of our country, I think someone like Ron Takaki was very much at the vanguard of always being somewhere where people least expected him to be. Yes, he was a Japanese American, but he spoke for all people and for all people for civil rights. Thank you.
Mr. Blakesley.
Thank you, Speaker. Members, I'd like to rise to adjourn a memory of F. Ray Bryant, a father of a friend of all of ours, Cynthia Bryant, the director of OPR and former Deputy Chief of Staff for the Governor. F. Ray Bryant of Grakel, California, died suddenly Thursday, May 28, 2009. He was born in Long Beach, California in November 1928, the only child of Stuart and Elizabeth Bryant. He spent his early years in the mining towns of Vidal and Darwin before the family moved to Paso Robles at the age of 8. He graduated from Paso Robles High School in 1946 and then from San Jose State College. He served in the U.S. Army and returned to Paso Robles and ran the Paso Robles Auto Parts store with his father. He purchased KPRL radio station in 1967, operating it until 1981. He was a founder of Heritage Oaks Bank and served on the board until his retirement and his move back to Grakel in 1991. He spent his time roaming Plumas County by car, bicycle, on foot, and snowshoe. He was interested in the history of the region and had done extensive research on the Lundy Ditch and Plumas Eureka State Park. He also kept a Google alert at all times for Paso Robles and worked as a marshal at the Plumas Pines golf course to make sure he could get free green fees. Ray is survived by his wife of 52 years, Nancy, daughters Cynthia Bryant, Charlotte Bryant, and Janet Bryant Youngworth, and husband Robert. He was a proud granddad of Emma Catherine, Blaine Stewart, and twins Anne Elizabeth and Alice Eleanor. I ask our body adjourn in his memory.
Very well. Thank you. The remaining requests to adjourn in memory will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Members, there is no further business before this House. Mr. Corey moves. Mr. Blakely seconds that this House stands adjourned until tomorrow, June 30 at 9 a.m. All those in favor signify by the usual sign of aye. Those opposed, ayes have it. Quorum call is lifted. Have a nice evening.
Sure.